Explained by the Billy Meier contacts, mysteries, myths, legends, conspiracy theories, historical inaccuracies, and more. Compiled by David Chance, revised October 18, 2023.
Extraterrestrials Part 1 Extraterrestrials General Extraterrestrial Hypothesis Extraterrestrial Life List of alleged extraterrestrial beings Ancient astronauts Note. This section generally deals with the existence of various extraterrestrial civilizations, their histories, societies, cultures, behaviors, technologies, etc. An excellent summary of the UFO extraterrestrial phenomenon is given by Billy Meier in his article Extraterrestrials, found in Contact Report 257. Drawings and photorealistic renditions of some extraterrestrials may be seen at the end of Contact Reports 830 and 836. A list of extraterrestrials who have contacted Billy Meier can be found at the FIGU website. See also alien abductions, see also alien-human hybrids, see also Anunnaki, see also Ashtar, Shiran, see also Calvert. Texas alien bases, see also cattle mutilations, see also Contactees General, see also Contactees Specific. True and false, see also crop circles, see also Eric von Daniken, see also Easter Island Moe, see also Eisenhower. Meeting aliens, see also extraterrestrials, Giza intelligences. Bafoth, see also extraterrestrials, Greys, see also extraterrestrials, reptilians, see also Gilgamesh. See also Hyperborea, Hyperboreans, see also Eka stones. See also long skulls, see also Mars face, see also men in black, see also Nazca lines, see also Patar, see also Quetzalcoatl, see also Starchild skull, see also Teos, Caves Metal Library, see also Tunguska, Event 1908, see also UFOs, the Flying Saucers. Asket's acquaintanceship.
Asket's clothing also seemed strangely familiar to me, and it was completely different from Svath's somewhat cumbersome clothing, which was reminiscent of a diving suit. The way Asket was dressed had to nearly awaken the impression of a very modern angel. She wore a floor-length, very heavily pleated dress, of a peculiarly whitish-silver color, belted at the hip. Long brunette hair fell over her shoulders, and her face was very beautiful. At least I perceived it so. We sat gently down on the ground, only a few meters from the gigantic construction, and only a few meters from a small Bedouin camp where various humans, dressed like Arabs, were already busy with the breaking of their camp at this early morning hour. They took no notice at all of the landing of the ship, and naturally, I was astounded because of that. It seemed simply absurd to me that the people could not see us. Yet I then accustomed myself very quickly to that, and found it very interesting that our invisibility really let nothing be recognized. Asket had, until then, not spoken another word, yet now suddenly her voice sounded in me, and then I felt her arm. I was not able to see her, because everything was indeed still invisible, as were Asket and I. But now she explained to me that she was attaching a small device to my belt, so we would also continue to remain invisible after we left the ship. I felt how she busied herself with my belt, and quite suddenly, I saw Asket kneeling next to me. Shocked, I spun around and stared across at the Bedouins, because now they would indeed have to see us. But then I heard Asket's voice in me again, which explained that only we could see each other, while we were invisible to all other eyes. We left the ship, which I could likewise now see, and which stood so majestically next to the Sphinx, and according to Asket's statements, could be seen by nobody. That must indeed have simply been a mistake of hers, because I still was not able to comprehend that, because of the small device hanging on my belt, everything was actually only visible just for the two of us. Asket's Explanations Part 1.
3rd February 1953. The reason for our coming into this, your Dern universe, lies in earlier times that are calculated in several centuries and, indeed, in the urge to explore and in a fulfillment of an obligation of our race, who, from the earliest times, came from your Dern universe. Since then, we again explored the expanses of your universe and, several centuries ago, discovered the solar system and, therewith, this world, whose inhabitants show a very old connection with the Pleiadians, as you name them for certain reasons, and in which we also are involved, also in the form of that which pertains to a mission. To be precise, the centuries, by your time reckoning, line up together to 33, during which we were again able to travel and explore your universe. Through our incessant explorations, we again found this world, as well as also our original homeland, and the very distant descendants of those who, from the earliest time, were the responsible ones who were relevant to the human life of this world, because a portion of the humans of the earth were not born here. Many are descendants of those who came out of the expanse of outer space, and indeed from that space that you name Lyra and Vega, with the eye of God, the Ring Nebula. In those territories lie, namely, the real and ultimate original homeland of the later terrestrial human races. Certainly, today, the actual direct descendants of the terrestrial forefathers no longer populate the territory and spaces and systems around the Ring Nebula and the Vega and Lyra heavenly bodies in a space-time shifted configuration. Rather, they live today on space and time shifted world bodies far on the other side of the system that you name the 7 heavenly bodies' 7 sisters, respectively, the Pleiades, approximately 400 light-years distant. They are the distant descendants of your i.e. Earth humans and our actual original forefathers. Yet, in something less than 20 Earth years, calculated from today, you should be given clarification about all these things from the direct descendants of your forefathers themselves, when you are sufficiently matured to cope with the new explanations and knowledge. Less than 130 Earth years ago, 3 races capable of space travel, from far galaxies of this universe, dispatched their expedition ships and advanced to the Earth. They explored this world with small scout craft and also made contact with priestly Earth humans, secretly and unrecognized, in order not to spread terror and angst. They heard and learned from the Earth humans the insanity of their ideologies and religions, and suddenly they believed themselves to be disadvantaged and falsely led in their own philosophy of creation and in their own evolution of consciousness and spirit. As a life form still very spiritually underdeveloped in consciousness, the Earth humans were able to throw these foreign life forms into doubt and to sow discord among them. Yet, was that any wonder then, if it is considered that very highly developed life forms from foreign galaxies visit the Earth, and here suddenly are instructed that they, as a race which has developed very far, are to have been disadvantaged by creation, because, allegedly, creation personally made itself known to a still very underdeveloped race, and they themselves, as a much higher life form, were passed over. Where was the blame to be found here? That creation created its only begotten Son, and transferred him to earth to a poor, underdeveloped people, and did not create this only begotten Son for the much higher developed life forms. Thus this insane information was spread on 3 distant worlds, and announced to the races, which had, for thousands of years, lived in peace, love, and in complete harmony among themselves, and with all forms of life. The insanity of the terrestrial religions was taken up by scientists, and further expeditions were sent to Earth in order to work for years to investigate all required religious facts. After the return of these expeditions, it was concluded, after exact clarifications, that all peoples would be instructed according to the terrestrial Christian religion, and indeed, in all matters. This was a fatal error, because within only 11 years, this peaceful humankind from a distant planet, having previously lived only by the creational laws, changed itself into the faith-based Christian image of the Earth human. At first, fights and discord originated only in the narrowest circles. Then, however, everything expanded very quickly, and it came to public unrest. Already the life forms soon murdered each other, until everything degenerated into a malicious worldwide war. Finally, encroachments into the two other worlds resulted, one of which was then destroyed. Different spacefaring races became attentive to that, and finally intervened, and forcefully terminated the deadly discord, which had already slowly carried itself into the entire solar system. The terrestrial religions, brought there through the expeditions, and the destruction-releasing Christianity were strictly forbidden to any life forms. All existing religious material was destroyed, and the old way of life again became the highest law. Any advance and any further visit to the earth was forbidden, and a decree was even issued that, if unexpectedly a ship should stray onto earth and no further possibilities of progress could be found, the entire crew, together with their ship, must totally eliminate itself. The Earth human has become capable of destroying his world in an atomic explosion, which would bring very dangerous consequences for the entire system. The entire inner solar system could be destroyed through an atomic destruction of this Earth, and fragments of it, or the planets, could be driven out into space as very dangerous projectiles. Thereby, again, entire further planetary systems could be destroyed and disrupted, which could lead to an unprecedented catastrophe in the Sol system. Through a destruction of the Earth and so forth, the structure of space-time could not be torn, but the entire solar system could fall into a deadly ruin. In and of itself, this danger is really not small, because as the Earth finds itself in a very exposed spot, this gruesome event could actually become reality if the destructive power is great enough and is of atomic origin. Therefore, it is our main task to prevent this possible event through clarifying impulses, and also to supervise, together with other forms of life from other worlds in this Earth's universe, so that the already evoked mischief of the Earth scientists is contained and averted through unnoticeable influencing impulses. That is a part of our mission, the most difficult that was ever to be recorded in the history of this solar system. We are caused to intervene, using logically enforced nonviolence, in the machinations of politics and religions, and to teach and positively influence leading personalities without them being conscious of it, and to flatten, in a positive manner, their intrigues and politics and so forth. Yet also thereby, it would be unfortunately unavoidable that various leading powers of various countries of the earth would be annihilated, deposed, or even murdered by their subordinate organizations or adversaries. The list of the politically leading men who would be killed through the hand of murder would be very long in the coming time, yet we may not change that. It is not our fault that all that would come out that way, because the Earth human alone bears that guilt. We want no death and no murder. We want peace in this and all other universes. Unfortunately, this requires that we must influence leading powers of the Earth to peace, using impulses whereby, however, they would create deadly enemies, whereby, unfortunately, many good humans will die, which we really cannot, however, prevent. Unfortunately, we only have time until autumn of the year 1974 to prevent the destruction of the Earth. Subsequently, our time is very tightly measured. Were our mission to fail, then this system-wide catastrophe will probably occur. But we have very good outlooks for the success of our mission, which is why we have prepared you, Billy, for our target day since your birth. If we have fulfilled our mission to prevent the gruesome catastrophe, then your mission comes about shortly after that, in the year 1975, about which you will be yet further prepared until then. Consider with these things that we have not come to interfere in the religious and political matters of Earth, or to lead the Earth humans in these things. We have also not come in order to establish contact with Earth humanity and to greatly help them in their evolution. We are only here in order to fulfill our mission and the prevention of the catastrophe, and to prepare you for your difficult assignment as prophet. For further things like help with evolution and so forth, other forms of life from your own universe are responsible, who will initially call themselves Pleiadians. Already for millennia, they supervise the Earth and keep those spacefaring races in check, who wish evil for you Earth humans and want to gain control over Earth humanity with the employment of religion and all the related deceptions, hallucinations, and trickery with which they buoy up the Earth humans with false promises. Asket's Explanations Part 2.
Asket's explanations and remarks took a very long time, and many things were also mentioned and explained afterwards, about which I must continue to maintain strictest silence. Even if I wanted to change this, I could not do so, because firstly, I made a promise, and secondly, everything was secured by a security block, so I would not be able to talk about it, even willingly. I do not know the nature of the security block, and it is only known to me that I would not be able to speak if I wanted to do so without permission. I also know this much about it, that the security block, which Asket has created through a device that seems a little strange to me, is connected with my sense of duty and other things in my consciousness. That is all I really know about it. It was already broad daylight when I woke up again and saw that Asket had conjured up drinkable and edible things from somewhere. We sat down comfortably at a table-like structure that had been pulled out of a ship's wall and feasted on a hearty breakfast. What I ate and drank I could not define, but it was very good, even if everything was completely foreign to me. The potion was slightly yellowish-white and a little thick, and was probably some kind of juice from a fruit I did not know. The food also seemed to be made of fruits, and also of some kind of vegetables. The taste of everything was very foreign to me, even though everything once again seemed somehow familiar. Everything was excellent, however, and it tasted delicious to me. Before breakfast, Asket brought a large container of cool, clear water from somewhere, which she carried out of the ship and placed on the ground not far away. Like little children, we then splashed around with the delicious water and cleaned ourselves with it. It was a very fun morning toilet. Asket's Explanations Part 3.
Our technology has developed so far that, with it, even after centuries, we can still entirely and faithfully reproduce the reality of once obtained impressions and spoken words, and so forth, in every detail and word. With all of it, it is only important that I listen to every spoken word and can also register your thoughts, feelings, and perceptions, whereby it is all stored in my subconscious. Therefore, tomorrow, when we undertake the trips into the past and partly also into the future, it will be important that I am always near to you so I can register everything in my subconscious. A further important factor is that in the various epochs and in the most varied lands of the past and future, the most varied languages also predominate, of which you naturally have no command, because in this life you have never learnt them. But this signifies no difficulties for you now, because we have small technical devices at our disposal which transform any language or other kind of communicative sound into a desired form. Accordingly, we call them transformers or translators. They are very small in size and can be fastened to the belt. I will give you one such device whereby you can understand any language as desired, and in this way also your language will be understandable to any others. Asket's Explanations Part 4. I am neither an angel nor do I come on a mission from God. These stories about us are deliberate misdirections by evil elements who want to conjure up malevolent things in a religious form. Here, Edouard, take this device and fasten it onto your belt. Edouard, what is that? A language converter. Asket's Explanations Part 5. This continent, America, was also inhabited by humans of extraterrestrial origin, from spacefarers and their descendants, around 2,500,000 years ago, by your time reckoning. But, as usual on this world, they got in each other's hair and annihilated themselves. They invented atom bombs and exploded them in a blitzkrieg. Even today, after many, many millennia, you still name many regions of this continent the same as they were named in much earlier times. These designations were handed down up to the current time, if also often in strongly altered form. But they still exist as testimony to that unreasonable and barbaric time. Those who wish to see hard evidence can find it at any time and view it and think about it. There are sites of former cities which stood there many, many thousands of years ago and have been melted by atomic hells into glass-like masses. The best preserved testimonies have become curiosities in your time because the Earth human does not know their genesis. But very well known in this regard are names like Death Valley, which, however, also still has a relationship to other events in the present day. The Valley of Fire near the city of Las Vegas is another witness to the past and the timeless, atomic insanity of humans who populated the Earth again and again. Asket's Explanations Part 6. It is all right. But now look at these articles of clothing from my homeland. You should put these on now and cover them with these cloaks. I recently brought these 6 cloaks with me out of the year 32 in the foreknowledge that I would need them.
In the floor-length, silvery white, shimmering and richly pleated, billowing dresses, we looked like angels, almost exactly as they were portrayed in the religious picture books which I had leafed through at various times. From somewhere, Asket had acquired an entire little sack of ancient coins, which she made shiny again with some sort of radiation.
Contact Report 001.
On the other hand, however, many dare to associate us with the human religion with which we have nothing to do and also never want anything to do. The Earth human calls us extraterrestrials or star people or whatever he or she likes. He or she imputes supernaturality to us and does not know us in the least. In reality, we are human beings just like the Earth humans, except that our knowledge and our essence of wisdom are far superior to theirs, so also from a technological point of view. Other solar systems, however, harbor a variety of lives, not just human ones. The forms of life are diverse, human as well as animal. Also, many animal or even plant life forms have developed to highly advanced level of life. So there are species who have attained great knowledge and have freed themselves from their spheres of life, who travel outer space and also come to your Earth every now and then. Many of them, however, are unpleasant contemporaries and live in a certain barbarism, which is often almost as bad as that of the Earth human. One must watch out for them because they often combat and destroy everything that gets in their way. Already often they have destroyed entire planets or forced their inhabitants into barbaric slavery. This is one of our tasks, to warn the Earth human about these creatures. Let the human beings know this, because more and more the time approaches, when a clash with these degenerate human creatures becomes unavoidable. Another task is aimed at the sects and religions and the underdevelopment of human consciousness associated with these. But as already mentioned, beamship deceivers and charlatans are also heading in the same direction, Quite clearly, they put out the lie to the world that we or our brothers and sisters from other parts of the outer space would come here by order of God, by which they mean the creation, as angels or the like, in order to bring the earth humans the long-desired peace and the truth of religion and the protection and commands of God. This is nothing more than a well-thought-out lie of sectarians and deceivers or charlatans. Because we have never acted by such orders, and we will also never do so. Bring this truth to the light of the world and make it known to the human beings. This is another part of our task. If this doesn't happen, then humankind will slowly destroy itself and fall into complete darkness of consciousness.
Contact Report 002.
But I do not want to praise or flatter you, as we too have long gone beyond those things. It is not the manner or the desire of us simply to penetrate into the thoughts of others when this is really not important. Moreover, we all have no right to penetrate into the personal secrets of others. If one penetrates into the thoughts of others, then there is always the danger that one will learn more from it than was originally intended.
What about so-called UFO contactees claiming that their friends from the stars would only communicate telepathically between themselves?
Certainly, there are such creatures who only communicate telepathically. However, their communication was telepathic from the very beginning, or else they quite simply let their spoken language wither away. To our knowledge, however, Earth's space has never been approached by beings whose means of communication were purely telepathic. All the wannabe contactees allude to our being on a mission for God and the Christian religion, a malicious lie that is devoid of any truth. Already often, beings from foreign races have come to your Earth and have undertaken their expeditions here. They collected various things that could be of service to their investigations. And it will also happen again and again that such beings will come here and pursue their studies. They come from the most diverse worlds and systems. They are often still new in the field of travel in outer space, and therefore carry out expeditions to expand their knowledge and cognizance. Thereby, it can happen that they unintentionally come into contact with the Earth humans, only to, in such a case, never come back again. They do not crave power and the like, as they are glad that they finally have serenity and order in their own worlds. With them, it can also happen that every now and then they take some Earth humans, bring them into their beam ships, and examine them very closely with their apparatuses and determine their anatomy most exactly. However, they let these human beings go again without exception, as they do not want to harm them. They are often more humane beings than the Earth human. But unfortunately, rather barbaric beings also travel outer space and come to Earth every now and then. Many among them are power-hungry and evil. With them, it can happen that they kidnap and abduct Earth humans, also other planetary human beings of other systems, and bring them to their home planets. There, these poor creatures then lead lives as exhibition and experiment objects. The Earth human and all other inhabitants of other worlds must beware of these creatures, for in their maliciousness, they often use the worst form of gavolt. Feelings and other human traits and impulsations are often foreign to them, so a life means nothing of value to them.
Contact Report 003.
Since our last meeting, I have occupied myself intensively and much with the so-called UFO literature. In doing so, I came across the suggestion that you human beings from the stars, if I may put it that way, are always described as supernatural, beautiful, and as protectors of humanity on Earth, almost as all-knowing and as teachers, etc., and that you should therefore live practically in spiritual and conscious perfection. But my intellect and my impression convey something completely different to me in this respect, and I cannot get over the fact that all this can only be lies. Lies that probably originate from sick brains or from brains that are not free and brand fantasy pictures as reality, because the originators of thoughts cannot cope with real reality and therefore escape into a fantastic pseudo-world. The reality seems to be too hard for them, so they flee into fantasies because they hope for help in these.
If deceivers label and describe us as you said just now, it is nothing more than an infamous lie, originating from the brains of consciously poor human beings who imagine a better life in their fantasy. And because they themselves cannot achieve it, at least not yet in this life, they simply attribute it to us and make us out to be something perfect. But we, too, are still far away from this stage and must continually develop ourselves further. We are not the so-called above-human or superhuman beings, as the Earth humans like to call us in their unknowledge and in their imaginations. We are also no teachers, missionaries, or pioneers. We only have the dutiful task of preserving the developing as well as already existing human life throughout the cosmic space. This means that we strive to keep order and watch over certain life. Here and there, we approach the inhabitants of different worlds. If our directives allow us to do so, choose individuals from among them and provide them with explanations. This, however, only then when a race develops higher and slowly becomes thinking. We then slowly prepare them for the need to become familiar with the thought of not being the only thinking beings in the universe. Here and there, we also help on a telepathic basis to let certain cognitions germinate and to make technical inventions which are necessary at that time.
Why then do you not appear en masse and show yourselves to the general public? And why don't you get in touch with the most diverse governments?
Without exception, all governments on Earth are staffed by human beings who have the characteristic of addiction to might and profit. Under the guise of peace and friendship, they would only want to seize our beamships to be able to exercise absolute Gewalt rule over the Earth with them. But they would also try to conquer the outer space because they know no bounds. However, they are not even able to on the Earth create peace and friendship between the countries, not even among the human beings in their own country. How, then, should they be able to have such means of might at their disposal, such as are our beamships and their multifaceted facilities represent it? There is no interest in showing ourselves to the general public. Their consciousness is still short and small and confined in religious enslavement. On the one hand, the Earth humans would worship us as gods in their short reflection, as they did already in earlier times. And on the other hand, there would be many among them who, as criminals and greedy for might ones, would seize our beamships. But there are also those who are not to be forgotten, and there are countless millions of them who would fall into complete hysteria and fall ill in consciousness. For these reasons, it is advisable for the time being to maintain contact only with individual Earth humans, and to via them slowly let the knowledge of our existence and tasks become known and to prepare them for what is to come. We are no wardens or guardians of the Earth humans. We only feel obliged to them because our originators were their ancestors, before they fled from the Earth as a result of self-inflicted catastrophes of some might-greedy ones and escaped to the Pleiades.
But I would still be interested in one thing. Simya Se. It has often been written that the human beings from the stars would become very old, millions of years even. What's up with that?
Do you believe these claims?
No, because it sounds too unlikely. I can only believe it when I look at it in the way that a human being of about 70,000 million years of age is no longer a human being, but some kind of spiritual embodiment.
You are right about that, too. A human being is capable of living for several hundred, or even thousands of years when it has attained a certain spiritual and consciousness-based relative state of perfection and a correspondingly high and healthy mode of life.
You are surely aware that our dear little women on Earth keep their age a secret, and that they smear their lips, face, finger, and toenails with powder and colors. What do you think about that?
Personally, I find makeup disgusting, but also all forms of painting the body as well as fingernails and toenails.
I think so too. But how is it with all of you? Do you also live in this delusion?
Definitely not. You do not know, however, that the average lifetime with us is very high and amounts to several hundreds of years, that is, about 1,000 years. So I am still very young and only 330 years old, which corresponds approximately to your 33 years by your understanding.
Contact Report 004.
Just like the Earth human, we also have to learn a language. Except that this is much easier for us and causes us less effort. We are in possession of all Earth languages that are presently spoken or were ever spoken at an earlier time. This means that we have accurate records of them in the most diverse forms. Language training courses, as you would call them, were compiled from them. This work is done by linguists and machines, similar to those you call computers. Then other machines of a similar kind serve to transmit and enter the language into us. This means that we get connected to such a machine or apparatus through which we then receive the desired language transmission. This occurs through a hypnosis-like state induced by the machine. As a result, the language terms and senses are implanted and registered. This process takes 21 days. After that, we need another 9 to 10 days in order to speak the language correctly. This means that we then have to practice speaking and pronouncing in the right way with the help of the apparatuses and the linguists. To learn a language, we need 30 to 31 days in this manner. We have a different language than the Earth humans. Even then, however, there is still the great danger that the barbaric Earth human will use his technical knowledge and ability, and his technical achievements maliciously and might greedily to satisfy his desires for might. This has happened and continues to happen time and again with other beings of other worlds, not only with the Earth human. In the outer space itself, dangers of various sizes lurk, and also other inhabitants of worlds are not simply left helpless in the face of an attack of another race. There could follow deadly defeats and complete enslavement for the Earth human, which would be equivalent to a falling back into primeval times. But it could also be that the planet Earth becomes completely destroyed because the technical prerequisites for this are already created in the outer space with very many humane and inhumane races up to the last relative perfection. If the Earth human wants to carry his barbaric imperiousness and greed for might out into the outer space, then he or she must reckon with his complete destruction, and no other planetary beings will rush to help him. But the Earth human being must also prepare to defend himself against malicious intruders, which he or she can only accomplish, however, through a complete unification of all the peoples of your planet. The dangers from the outer space are great and are lurking in all corners of the galaxies. Mostly, these are inhumane, might-greedy beings who know no feelings or only inferior ones, or those very badly out of the control of the good human nature. Others, however, know how to defend themselves, and they inevitably always do this radically. Other world races do not let themselves be senselessly warred or driven into exile, servitude, and exploitation, as is customary among the peoples of the Earth. They will defend themselves by gavolt, and still for a long time they will be vastly superior to all the technological possibilities of the Earth humans. Where this is not the case, however, they are often under the protection of further and higher developed intelligences whose techniques reach the final relative perfection. The Earth human must become familiar with the thought that his ancestors had brought the whole humankind and the Earth itself to the brink of ruin and had to partially evacuate the planet in a wild escape. But it should also serve him as a warning that greed for might and barbarism are deadly attributes. That this is the case has also been experienced by a second race in your solar system. In their boundless hatred and in their uncontrollable greed for might, they destroyed themselves right down to the last, and hardly any being survived the fight. They annihilated and destroyed their own planet in a tremendous explosion, and nothing remained of it but many thousands of asteroids that still orbit your sun today, as a memorial to the deadly irrationality of human beings. Remnants of the once splendidly blooming planet Malona, which its inhabitants destroyed in their barbaric greed for might and irrationality.
Contact Report 005 Note: the following excerpts explain how some ancient Pleiadian ancestors found their way to Earth. See also Contact Report 9:120-170, Contact Report 70, S23-181, and Contact Report 121, B79-90.
Only the knowledge and ability of our ancestors, who had settled on the Earth and had begotten their descendants here, prevented the terrible end. Deep in the unknown space, in a space-time shifted solar system of the Milky Way, a solitary star floated far away from the normal orbits of the satellites orbiting the Sun. After the thousands of years, it, the destroyer comet, then rushed suddenly and unexpectedly into the closest sphere of influence of the Sun and its planets. Now, already illuminated by the reflecting rays of the Sun, it approached the orbit of the outermost planet at tremendous speed. Still only a few hundred units away from the next worlds, it evoked hellish storms in these, which destroyed large areas that had been cultivated by the human beings peacefully emerging there. With trembling for their arduously gained goods and their already hard lives, they suddenly found themselves exposed to the immense and uncompassionate forces of the universe. Helpless, doomed to be handed over from life to death, they stared out into the sky, to the gigantic wandering planet which raced towards them as a cosmic mortal projectile. On the night of the third day after the incursion of the destroyer into the planetary pathways, the middle of the night may just have passed. The drifter from outer space entered the elliptical orbit of the sixth planet. Full of horror and consternation over the immense forces of nature, the human beings fled into the vast plains that covered the planet in great numbers. 2/3 of the humankind that inhabited the planet was killed and destroyed in the unleashed hell of nature. Forced by cosmic determinations, the survivors had to find a new beginning, devoid of any culture, set back to a primordial time of the development. The humankind of the distant solar system, 2/3 of which were destroyed at that time, found a new beginning which was hard and full of privation. Nevertheless, in less than 9 centuries, the human beings built up a new civilization and culture, created and driven out of the hardship arising from cosmic forces. The people succeeded in preventing further cosmic catastrophes and annihilations. Through arduous research, work, and voluntary commitment to the very last one, they created plans for their new culture and for a far-reaching technology. Dwellings were built that could withstand the gay vault of nature, and generation after generation brought together their knowledge and skills. Their spirit and their consciousness and their knowledge refined themselves rapidly, and soon the succeeding generations had reached a technology which, without any imagination, defied all possibilities. And there came the time when the descendants flew out into the unending expanses of the universe in round, plate-like flying ships with beam drives. Other solar systems and planets were flown to and expeditioned. New worlds and possibilities opened up in order to transplant the peoples of the home planet, which had meanwhile become too small for the new humankind. The scientists with their spacecrafts and abundantly provided means of all kinds and fantastic application possibilities used the dimension gate known to them to, in another space-time configuration of the Dern universe, reach the Milky Way area and explored the space for ever newer things. They found many new habitable worlds and solar systems, which they often made subservient to themselves using their beam weapons in short one-sided fights in order to conquer them for the settlement of their race. However, apart from their horrendous material and gene-based technology, they also perfected their consciousness and their spirit, so that nothing which they wanted to experience remained foreign to them anymore. The use of their powers of consciousness became implicitness to them, and so they gradually raised themselves to rulers vis-a-vis their peoples. They called themselves kings of wisdom with the word Ish-Wish, which is on the earth translated as God. Far superior spiritually, and in terms of knowledge as well as consciousness to the normal people, they soon dominated it in evil dictatorial form. Yet after centuries, having grown tired of the godlike scientists, the people rose against them initially in silent revolution. Oppressed, however, by the spiritual and consciousness-based powers and by the tremendous knowledge of the gods, the people had to submit to their rulers. But the will for freedom made them secretly prepare for the fight. It glowed like a smoldering ember for 4 centuries, to flare up in the given moment as untamable wild conflagration. According to the earthly calculation of time, it was about 230,000 years ago when the Liberation War broke out. Evil fightings covered many planets, and much was destroyed. A scientist named Asael used the opportunity to make himself self-reliant and flee. Secretly, he managed to bring a large fleet of spaceships into his possession, to man them and to flee under heavy acts of fighting. With 183 wide bodies and almost 250 reconnaissance ships, with a total of 360,000 human beings on board, he fled from his home system. For years, they were restlessly roaming through the expanses of the space, before one day they found a solar system that offered them opportunities to live, far away from their home system. It took 300 of years after they seized the planet because they created a new humankind. Afterwards, they settled on 2 more planets of their new home system to then again traverse the outer space while exploring. In doing so, they came across the system of the earthly sun. They settled here on 3 different planets, namely on the Earth, on Malona, and on Mars, and began with the building of a new culture. But the planets were still rather inhospitable and often hostile. So they left the planets again and paid them visits only now and then. When then, on the 2nd planet, the Earth, first intelligent life started moving, they came back and lived there. But in accordance with the human beings reflecting, power struggles broke out again, and they left the Earth. From the new home planet, however, the development of the Earth was constantly monitored and expeditioned year after year. From time to time, it was tried again and again to settle the planet. Also, beings were deported to the Earth, and these were simply left to their fate without any technology and help. They became stunted, wild, and bestial. Then finally the time came when the major step was finally ventured. A certain culture was built up on the Earth, which lasted for several millennia. But again, greed for power broke out, and everything was destroyed. So the Earth fell again into its old existence. Then it took again several millennia before a new attempt was made. This time, however, no more in the sense of an actual expedition. On the home planet, once again, differences of opinion arose, because the scientists again elevated themselves to gods and subjugated the peoples to servitude. From this, it resulted that a group of scientists and other human beings who thought differently banded together and seized various spaceships. Almost 70,000 human beings fled and settled on the Earth. Their highest leader, Pelagon, was freely recognized by all as Ish-Wish God and led a tight regiment. He had nearly 200 sub-leaders, each of whom was responsible for a special field of knowledge. They were, so to speak, sub-gods, or also called guardians. On the home planets, however, war broke out and much was destroyed again. But the human beings finally achieved the freedom and the peace. That has remained so ever since and will also never change again. According to the earthly time calculation, that was around 50,000 years ago. Note, see also Contact Report 7/11/47-2-106. Only on the Earth itself, things were not always so peaceful, and many mistakes were made. And by one of these mistakes, the primal human races of the Earth were procreated, whose descendants still live today and are about to commit the same mistakes as did our ancestors.
Contact Report 006.
I also like to laugh.
Contact Report 007.
My next question deals with the earthly human races. We have here yellow, red, white, brown, and black human beings. How does that come? Why is there this color differentiation?
This actually belongs in the history of Earth humanity, which I wanted to continue to tell you. But further, I wanted to say that some differently colored races already became extinct a long time ago. But in the same way, they are all the product of the celestial suns. That is to say, they were begotten of them, just like the Earth races still existing today. The celestial suns or starfarers, as we want to call our forebears, were at home on many different planets of stars, in a different space-time configuration or far away from the Sol system, whereby the planets were fundamentally different in climatic terms. Hence, they also produced other races which were able to adapt to the climate from the year beginning. Due to the climate conditions, also a corresponding skin color developed, of which there are innumerable in the universe. Their body sizes were also different because, depending on the gravity of the planet in question, they ranged from only 50 centimeters tall up to several meters. There were and are even beings, which you call gigantic ones, giants or titans, and such beings, too, once endued the Earth with life. They, too, produced offspring here, but they were gradually exterminated because they were usually very malicious and exercised tyranny. The different color races of today are, thus, descendants of our variously colored forebears, who came from different planets of foreign stars. Well, you are right with your view that the human beings of the Earth are not descendants of the apes. They were partially begotten by our forebears, who also mixed themselves with Earth beings, who were simply called Eves at that time. But the Earth beings at that time were of the most diverse forms and kinds. Some of them were completely wild creatures of human-like forms, some of which had been marooned on the Earth in earlier millennia by our forebears, that is, their descendants. These descendants of the marooned were abused by foreign spacefarers. The Eves were, besides Earth-created hominid living creatures, nothing more than very wild descendants of those marooned thousands of years ago, from whom at that time any tools were taken away. But since our forebears were mixed races of different colors and sizes, they, of course, also produced different colors and races of different sizes completely according to their characteristics. The smallest ones were 50 centimeters tall, while the largest and most vicious ones reached some 12 meters. Their appearance was also varying, and some type of them were only remotely reminiscent to human forms. They were left to die out or were killed if they were too vicious. In many cases, they hid themselves in far remote areas and survived for thousands of years, as their average age was about 1,500 years. But little by little, they also became victims of the time or of the human beings. The last of the vicious ones, whose life was ended with Gewaltsamkeit, died a little more than 230,000 years ago. Today, according to our knowledge, only 7 such beings of the old human life forms still live on the Earth, where they remain so well hidden that they will certainly never be found and will one day die a peaceful death, and that without descendants, because they have become too old and passive for propagation.
So far, you have never told me where you actually always stay, when you are not carrying on conversations with me.
We have our bases on the Earth, as well as on many other planets, where we stay continuously. We also have such a base in this country, Switzerland. It is located high up in the mountains near there. I have my main whereabouts when I am on the Earth. However, we also have some other important stations that are distributed all over the world. But they are all built so securely that it would be impossible to find them if one does not know them exactly. Moreover, I am very often on the move and have to fulfill my tasks on a wide variety of worlds. I also often go to visit my home, as you tend to say, and so I also often spend time on the Pleiades, as we call them for the time being.
Contact Report 008.
Just ask, but be conscious of the fact that I am not allowed to reveal any secrets that would still be detrimental to the development of the consciousness of the human being of Earth.
You mean the Aquarian age?
Sure, that's the era I'm talking about. It will bring developmental change events for the human beings of Earth. Very good ones, but also very bad ones. Particularly grave are in this regard the religious influences, because this intellectual, spiritual consciousness-based era brings forth very many new and evil types of religions and sects, wherethrough the human being is supposed to be even more struck in their delusion, whereby also sectarian mass suicides and murders are to be feared. But we want to try to prevent this, because otherwise the same thing will happen that happened to our ancestors, namely that the sect rulers and scientists will, as time goes by, also elevate themselves to Ishwishs and bring about the same catastrophe over creatures and solar systems as it was also characteristic of our forebears and many other races.
But now, once again, a question regarding the age. How is this, then, with you?
The laws are of equal value throughout the universe. When we have a higher life expectancy than the human being of Earth, then this is conditioned by life. But at the same time, research and evolution also play a role that is not insignificant. But we do not want, and also are not allowed to exercise any coercion to convince the Earth humans of the truth.
Contact Report 009.
Already, for decades, various human beings of Earth and entire groups have been pressing us partly consciously, partly unconsciously into spheres into which we do not fit in any form, spheres in which we do not want to be at home either. Often only for the sake of the desire to show off and for the sake of pure profit are we ranked higher than we are in reality. But we are all only human beings, like all human creatures. According to your terms, we may well live in a state of superior technology and of great spiritual and consciousness-based progress, but not in a boastfulness and overwhelmingness which the majority of the human beings on Earth impute to us. We are neither the guardians of the Earth humans nor any God-sent angels or the like. Various ego-addicted persons and groups led into the unreal by them claim that we were the guardians of the Earth and its human beings, and that we would direct their destinies. However, this does not correspond to the truth, because we are only carrying out a self-obligated task which in no way has anything to do with a surveillance and a directing of the actual destinies of the Earth humans. It is therefore wrong to portray us as over-earthly ambassadors and guardians. If we were ambassadors and guardians in the sense as it is claimed about us, then we would land out in plain view and direct the destinies of the human beings of Earth in full recognizability. We are not what is imputed on us, even though we are spiritually and consciousness-based about 25 million years farther progressed and technically almost 312 millennia ahead of the Earth humans. But it is in the sense of all those Earth humans who are themselves caught in a religious belief to make us become something godly. Note: the following excerpts explain how some ancient Pleiadian ancestors found their way to Earth. See also Contact Report 5 S67 2-193, Contact Report 70 S23 2-181, and Contact Report 121 B79 290. At our fifth contact, I finished the history of humankind at the time when 50,000 years ago, according to earthly calendar, our homeworlds found freedom and peace. Before that time, 70,000 human beings fled under the leadership of the scientist Pleiadian. With spaceships which they had seized, they fled through the space out of another configuration of space and time into the one of the Milky Way of the Dern universe and settled on the Earth. Under Pleiadian's leadership, there were 200 sub-leaders, scientists who were each responsible for a specific field of knowledge. Pleiadian was unanimously recognized and respected by them and all others as King of Essence of Wisdom, Ishwish God. In the course of the millennia, they built large cities and inhabited all continents of the Earth. Unfortunately, this only went well for barely 10,000 years before lust for might regained the upper hand and a deadly war raged over the world. Everything without residue was destroyed, and only a few thousand human beings were able to survive, while others fled again into the outer space and into the old space-time configuration and settled on distant worlds. For the next 7,000 years, the Earth was no longer flown to, during which time those who stayed behind became completely wild and degenerated. After that, the descendants of those who had settled on distant worlds returned. Again, they were led by an Ishwish. Under such a kind of Ishwish command, the distant descendants later built Atlantis and Mu, two huge cities on two different continents. For thousands of years, they lived in complete friendship and in peace until some scientists again succumbed to the greed for might and wanted to seize the rule. However, having become tired of the constant wars, the peoples rose against them. Hence they seized spacecrafts and fled into the outer space, according to earthly calendar about 15,000 years ago. For 2 millennia, they and their descendants lived in a neighboring solar system. 2 millennia during which they had become very evil and were only able to uphold a certain regulation under the strictest discipline. Through mutations and researches, they achieved a very long lifespan, which amounted to more than 3,000 years. Obsessed with imperiousness, they left their world about 13,500 Earth years ago and came back to the Earth. Their supreme leader was the scientist Aris, who was also called the Barbarian. As already Ish-Wish Pelagon, nearly 190,000 years ago, he also had 200 leaders or sub-leaders who were each responsible for a specific field of knowledge. They settled in 2 parts in the far north and in today's America, Florida, whereby they constantly forged ahead to Atlantis and Mu in order to invade them with war. And only a few millennia after their renewed requisitioning of the Earth, they succeeded in completely destroying Mu and Atlantis. Few survivors went into servitude, while great scientists were able to flee and returned to the original homeworlds in the Pleiades. But thousands of years before that point in time, the new intruders spread across the earth, and Ish-Wish Aris ruled with a firm and bloody hand. But also his sub-leaders usurped all kinds of things and made themselves more and more independent. Within only 3 decades, they acted largely at their own discretion, even though they feared the punishments of the Ish-Wish Aris. They pushed very far away from them the codex of preserving their own race pure under all circumstances and not allowing it to fall prey to mutations. Forbidden and secretly, they went out and captured Earth-created life forms, but so also turned wild or mutated beings, which were very distant descendants of former human beings from the outer space. The female creatures, beautiful in their wildness, were tamed and copulated with or fertilized with genetical manipulation by the leaders who called themselves celestial sons. Case by case, depending on their own races, they thus created mutated creatures, completely new life forms that were of dwarfish stature, very gigantic or similar to animal forms. Samjasa, the supreme leader of all sub-leaders, copulated with an EVA, a female creature who, according to his understanding, was still preserved as the most human-like and also quite beautiful one. The descendant of this act was of male gender and a human being in good form. Samjasa called him Adam, which is tantamount to human being of Earth. Another copulation of the same kind brought forth a female creature, and in later years, Samjasa determined that these 2 Adams had to mate together. In the meantime, however, many other creatures of the same kind were conceived, who banded together into large groups and tribes. From them, today's humankind developed, which was already at its beginning according to its races distributed to the most different continents. Ish-Wish Aris was very infuriated by this action, and where he could get hold of the fallible ones, he ordered his incorrectly acting sub-leaders to be captured and killed or banished. In the course of time, however, he changed his mentality, and he recognized a new might that he could exercise over the newly created human beings of Earth. Through newly appointed guardian angels and sub-leaders, he cast a spell over 3 human kinds. These were the forebears of those whom you now call Indians, then the inhabitants who had settled around the Black Sea, and thirdly those who roamed in the south below the Mediterranean Sea as gypsies and were therefore called Hebrians. Through his guardian angels Ish-Wish Aris, let these humankinds be subjugated and a spell be cast on them. As supreme ruler over them, he let himself be worshipped and prayed to by them. In his megalomania, he let himself in relation to them be celebrated as creator and creation, and his sub-leaders as creational helpers. He enacted harsh and strict laws which without exception demanded the blood of a culprit. His son, Jehav, who took over his reign after 3,400 years, was only very little better, for he too, as proclaimed Ishwish, demanded nothing but blood and death among the 3 enslaved humankinds. It was only the later descendants of the gods who became more humane and developed in the sense of the spiritual evolution. When this was finally the case, they decided, in accordance with their change of mentality and consciousness, to leave the development of the Earth humans to their natural courses and to withdraw themselves to their original home. So the last of them left the Earth 1,143 years ago and returned as peaceful creatures to our Pleiades, where their own humankind had in the meantime become very highly developed. Today they live united as particularly long-lived with the normally aging, who on average reach 1,000 years of age, and so today we are one single people in peace and freedom.
Contact Report 012.
Not just you alone make mistakes. They also happen to us here and there.
I'm about to start crying, damn it again.
I really feel like it too. Sadly, not everything can be predetermined, because we all have to make mistakes in order to learn.
Contact Report 014.
We are also subject to mistakes, which I have already mentioned. I want to fix some of the mistakes I have been making. I just do not want to make a mistake twice.
Contact Report 015.
As a result, I have to admit that I succumbed to some errors that brought me to wrong conclusions. You, however, with your feelings, have drawn the right conclusions and laid the perspectives correctly. Obviously, you are superior to me in such things because you are able to start from purely earthly aspects. However, I do not want to exclude that you can arrive at wrong decisions through this form, just as I did with mine. In the end, we are human beings, albeit from different worlds and from different consciousness-based and spiritual stages, but still fundamentally similar forms of life who have to go the way of their evolution. So this does not exclude that I also make errors, which I ask your friends and acquaintances to understand. My life form is indeed higher developed in all things of the physical and swinging wave-based manner than your people's, but yet we are also not standing at the degree of that absolute full development which would exclude errors. This one should always consider. We are really not those Visen of absolute full development, as they are so gladly exploited by pseudo-contact persons for religious benefit, because these supposed Visen of absolute full development are either cheating and power-grabbing creatures who want to bring the human beings of Earth under their harsh rule, which actually happens in a few cases, or they are quite simply pseudo-Visen who exist only in the imagination of the pseudo-contact persons. As my life form is just as imperfect as yours, it must be absolutely understood that I am also subject to errors. Nevertheless, if I slip up in such things, then I name them openly and stand by them, for it would make no sense and be of no benefit if I were to cover them up or deny them. This would only redound to my own disadvantage. But now, once again, is the time for us to say goodbye. But I will call you again myself in a short time, for there are still other important things to make clear.
But then call me directly to China or Chihuahua, for those places are more along the way than this place here in the middle of nowhere, where I had to take my moped for miles.
Can it also be the South Pole or the North Pole? Notice sarcasm.
Contact Report 016.
But I would also like to give him Hans Jacob the feeling of my gratitude, Because he acknowledges that also our way of life needs further development, and we therefore make mistakes, which he accepts in the form that he does not become reproachful. In other words, and in other sense, that he excuses my actions, which were faulty.
Contact Report 017.
Not for nothing did I direct the steps towards eliminating plant life forms. Such things are subject to certain laws of our race that allow such eliminations only in emergencies.
Oh, so you got a fish, huh?
That seems to be your modern language again?
Right, and it means you laughed at a man and wants to get married?
No, I feel much better without a man, at least now. I may have something planned for later.
The dear Earthlings make their stupid jokes about Moon and Mars and other space people. They draw them as scale-reinforced monsters with fixed skull antennas, feelers, 5 breasts, and many other idiocies. They call these things humor. Do not you read newspapers and magazines, etc.?
Sure, because I move here and there among the terrestrial human beings, shielded from the earthly human vibrations, and get hold of something readable from time to time, but I have never found such things in it.
If, of course, you only read Mickey Mouse, Fix, and Foxy, and Superman booklets, then you might not be in the right place.
I actually know them, and I think they're funny. However, other readables are mostly only newspapers, etc.
Contact Report 020.
We do not want to create a global truth organization or in a short time flood your world inhabitants with the truth, because such an enterprise would not be useful for our cause. Only small groups are useful when their members are fully and totally truthful. Through them, the truth will slowly be spread and will encompass humanity over generations and centuries.
Contact Report 021.
On the other hand, I approached you several times with the suggestion to get you crystals which you could sell.
And what if checks reveal any radiation that is not of earthly origin?
Our technology enables the extraction of such radiations from all material forms if they do not contain changeable life. Thus, I have also removed all radiation phenomena in the minerals and crystals given to you, so that when they were introduced into earthly space, they constitutionally absorbed the radiation inherent in the Earth in a few moments, so that no difference can be discerned in comparison with similar earthly crystals and minerals.
How can you free them from their radiation? What is the process and how does it all work?
Our apparatuses extract the radiation from the things and release it converted into good form again, so that it can be absorbed again by the planets concerned. The whole process is a regeneration process of natural order. The apparatus could therefore be called a neutralizer according to your terms.
Contact Report 022.
But can you explain to me once why your mental transmissions always appear so stereotypical in me at a later point in time, and that there are no repetitions of any words or sentences? These later transmissions of our conversations are so completely different than when we are in intellectual exchange with each other. I often have a lot of trouble writing your reports because you just keep dictating and never repeat a word. Your report submissions come into my consciousness just as we did the conversation. This often leads to the fact that I have to omit words or entire phrases when writing in order to be able to follow dictation in writing at all. This is not always the case, but it is often the case that I write wrong words. Sometimes in your transmissions it seems to me as if your thoughts are a mechanical sequence, as if they were coming out of a machine. I always have to think of a tape that reproduces exactly what it has recorded. Therefore, I have come to the conclusion that you do not carry out your transmissions personally, but have them transmitted by a machine or something similar. The reason for this could be that you suffer from the same evil as we human beings on Earth, namely that you also cannot remember word for word what has been spoken between us or elsewhere. But since the subconscious potencies never forget anything, and you can tap into them with certainty, you will do this with a machine or something, which then radiates everything to me. These are my basic considerations. Of course, I can be wrong in all things, but the degree of probability of these considerations seems to me to be the greatest. These considerations would also be compatible with the fact that not a single word is repeated in your transmissions, and that I therefore often have great difficulty in writing down the sentences and words coming in at normal speaking speed quickly enough. So I thought about the inner workings of the machine, and came across the fact that it is only necessary to have a censorship-free.
Wait, you cannot explain that, at least not to the humans of your world. I will therefore have to consult with the others and judge everything with them. But I suppose that our High Council will have to make its decision on this, because if we have to eliminate certain things completely, then we have.
Wait, Sim Ya Se. Are you saying that you want to extinguish something in me?
You would not feel anything and would not be affected in any way later in life. It is only a matter of removing the knowledge about a certain system of elements that you have become aware of through your reflections, etc. Our possibilities in this respect are so very precise and of absolute security that you would neither be able to do anything about it nor feel the slightest bit.
But I would know that something is simply no longer present in me, yes?
Sure, because it only removes a certain factor, but not your memories.
What's this total damn elimination supposed to be?
It springs from the knowledge of a highly developed science of our breed. The ability and effects of such total eliminations are absolutely certain, and their precision does not allow for the slightest substance of uncertainty or vagueness.
But first I have to know the timetable for a total elimination. How much time would such a total elimination take, from order to completion?
If we put our equipment into operation, which is always on standby for such total eliminations, and adjust it to the life form in question, then this takes less than 3 minutes, whereby the distances play no role whatsoever.
And how much time do you need if I would give the order on mental basis via your person?
I still do not see clearly, but we would need another minute to transmit your error.
Well, that would be less than 4 minutes in total, if I understood correctly, yes?
Contact Report 023.
These laws about marriage and coitus, etc., as they were preserved in the Talmud Emmanuel, are of human origin and created for the purpose of giving order to the earthly forms of life and also to maintain them.
But what about yourselves? Do you also have human legislation?
Where thinking life forms live, such laws and recommendations are given everywhere. Depending on the state of the conscious and spiritual development of the human being's leaders, however, these laws have been taken from the natural laws and shaped in a responsible form into human natural laws. So they are laws and recommendations of natural logic, and in no way full of illogical and even dumb primitive, as they are created and applied in your world.
Actually, you have already answered my next question with your answer regarding the existence of your laws, which aims at whether you also know forms of criminality and other degenerations, etc., to which you have to apply laws and recommendations. Laws and recommendations, etc., are only necessary where they must maintain order. But where order has become a matter of course and no degenerations occur, human laws and recommendations are also superfluous. The logical conclusion to be drawn from this is that you, too, are not beyond the state of degenerations, and that consequently, order has not yet become a matter of course. However, I can explain this in such a way that it is connected with the eternal becoming and developing, according to the creative law of becoming and development, As a result of the ongoing creation of new spirits, different levels of age and development of the various levels of the mind appear. Thus, it must logically become a natural process that life forms are also born in your race that are still below your actual normal mental potency, and therefore have to develop further. Since development causes mistakes in every respect, however, these inferior forms of mind or life forms must follow the natural path of development, and thus make mistakes. But since mistakes can be disorderly and even fatal, laws and recommendations must be applied in order to maintain this order. That is how I imagine it, because it seems logical to me.
It is absurd how, unfortunately, charlatans always fraudulently claim that we are superhumans and that we no longer need any laws or recommendations. Only where the creative order has become a matter of course do such laws and recommendations fall by. However, this is only the case in very high spiritual spheres. So that means in purely spiritual spheres, where all material things belong to the past. Material forms of life, however, that is to say, material body-dependent forms of all kinds, are still afflicted with too many errors for them to simply ignore a law and commandment adapted to their state.
That is plausible, but how do you then handle this law and commandment with you? If I have understood correctly, have you created a uniform punishment for certain offenses, etc., which is pronounced as a temporary or lifelong banishment?
Sure, you got it right. If the punishment is still applied very primitively everywhere in you, then this is no longer the case with us. Our legislation corresponds to our conscious intellectual level and is therefore truly humane, which cannot be said of your legislation. Serious offenses are no longer punished with us by total elimination and damage of the material body, etc., as this is still barbaric custom and custom with you. Our unity adherence finds its application in a banishment for time or for life. The fallible life forms are banished in this respect to other worlds, which serve exclusively only this purpose. Moreover, only same-sex life forms are banished to such a world, that is to say, only male or only female life forms. This prevents reproduction and no offspring can be conceived. The exiled are on their own on their worlds and have to take care of themselves through their own work. Any mechanical or apparatus aids, etc., are made available to them, but they are deprived of permission to make such aids themselves if they could be used for escape. In order to emphasize this provision, regular checks are carried out on these worlds, and any secretly manufactured products of this kind are eliminated. In addition, any personal physical contact with any other forms of life outside the places of performance will be completely eliminated. On some of our worlds, fallible life forms are banished also on large islands in large seas, if the fallibility rate of the respective worlds is only very small. However, the whole handling and execution is the same as for worlds specially selected for this purpose. This form of punishment ensures the greatest possible security for the order to be observed, and on the other hand, the mistakes are not a burden on the masses. Besides, however, this form of punishment is very humane and expedient, because during the lifelong or temporal exile, the misguided are not inhibited in their development. Besides, crime and the like is practically non-existent in our country.
Could it not be that at very early times our Earth once also served extraterrestrial beings as such a planet of banishment?
Sure, your assumption is correct. In primeval times, variously fallible life forms were banished to your Earth from various worlds in the universe, including our race. But these early times can no longer be grasped by us either, and we have no precise data about them.
But how is it now with you with the so-called marriage, mate there also male and female as with us? Or is the procreation of offspring perhaps carried out in a different way than in our country? Are you perhaps breeding your little children in test tubes or in breeding farms?
This is typical human nonsense of earthly origin, a product of pathological imagination. Creation has endowed each individual form of life with very specific values so that it can reproduce in a very natural way. The law of unity is of equal value in the whole universe, namely that two values of different and thus female and male sex, each uniform in itself, together form and result in a large unit or a hyperunit, thus also in the form of the reproduction of any material life forms.
But what about marriage and the procreation of offspring?
Fundamentally, our laws and recommendations in this regard are still partially preserved in many of your ancient writings, for they were transmitted to you by our distant ancestors. With our race, often only marriages of non-monogamous shape are done, after most exact clarification of all facts concerning togetherness. Of course, mistakes in these things cannot be excluded, but they will be eliminated or corrected if necessary. The progeny is determined by the highest rate in the sense that a certain number of births in a certain period must be kept in order to preserve the breed and not cause overpopulation. It is naturally the duty of each individual life form to procreate offspring for the conservation of the species and to exercise control over them. Forms of life that are united in a marriage, that is to say, woman and man, remain classified in this union for the duration of their lives. Divorces, as you know them, are inadequate and allowed only in those blatant cases in which the laws and recommendations of the marriage covenant are grossly violated, with the guilty then falling into banishment. These are, however, occurrences which belong to the absolute rarity with our races. The handling of the laws and recommendations for the individual things of marriage and sexual intercourse, etc., I do not have to mention here specifically, because you can read Talmud Emmanuel from this book. Our laws have been the same for thousands of years, and are consistent with Emmanuel's interpretations of the Talmud. The change has only occurred in the form of a tightening, because this was humanized and changed according to our time and our development. The uniform punishment in these things forms the temporal or lifelong banishment.
If I remember correctly, Rashid in the Talmud called these things in chapter 12 about marriage and coitus. So you mean that these laws are still valid today, as they were at Emmanuel's time 2,000 years ago, and that you yourselves have adapted the penalty for your races simply to your time and your conscious and spiritual state, in the form that you simply pronounce a lifelong or temporal banishment as a measure of punishment?
Sure, I am sure.
What happens when a person of your race falls in love with a person of another, spiritually and consciously underdeveloped race?
Exactly the same as yourselves. People love each other with all their feelings, just as I love you.
But you have not yet fully answered my question, because in it was also hidden the how, what, and why of a conjugal union or non-union.
If, however, a person of our race falls in love with a race that is different from the rest of the world, and is mentally and consciously inferior to us in the sense that the two want to unite, then this possibility will be clarified according to our laws. If the facts show that the necessary conditions of all kinds are fulfilled, the marriage may take place. It really doesn't matter whether the otherworldly way of life lives under our own spiritual and conscious state or not, because in cases of underdevelopment, it is developed by our scientists according to our conscious state.
I think that is very fair, but are such incidents common occurrences?
No, they're actually quite rare.
But now one more question, Simyase. How great in number is your humanity?
I can only answer this question by telling you that we are united in a covenant that extends far into the cosmos. This covenant includes various solar systems and planets in wide space, and the total number of life forms of human norms invigorating them amounts to 127 billion units. But of course, there are countless other intelligent life forms of non-human norms, in addition to humane human forms, which are unknown to us or with which we are simply not connected.
But can you at least say something about the habitability of our neighboring planets?
I can only explain so much that different planets were inhabited by our races in earlier times and are still important as bases for us today in minimal masses. Certainly, there are several different life forms active in your solar system from the vastness of the universe, but they are not located here. Like us, they have their bases, but their breeds live very, very far out in space on their own worlds.
Familiarity sometimes simply awakens feelings that are unreal.
Sure, and we too are subject to these things. It has often seemed to me, according to my feelings, that you are a human being of our race.
Contact Report 024.
Unfortunately, it is often very difficult to find our way in your human beings of the earth, because through the uncontrollability of your feelings, we are often misled and then have to correct ourselves.
Contact Report 025.
With regard to the illogical questions concerning financial aid, etc., I would like to make an explanation for the questioners here, because every human being on Earth should bear in mind, firstly, that we do not have any corresponding things to do with goods and means of payment, etc., as they are customary and common on the Earth. Even if we wanted to, we could not serve you with financial means, which you call money, because we do not have such goods, etc. But when we are here and want to help humanity on the earth in its consciousness-based and other development, then this means a self-imposed obligation that we do not let ourselves be made to do things at the order of the earth humans. Our task corresponds to a free-willed undertaking.
Contact Report 026.
For a long time, I have suspected that there are other extraterrestrials in our world besides you, but with very different desires and hopes. These beings may be wholly alien to your race, at least some of them, but others must be of your own race. I could imagine that not all extraterrestrials who are mischievous in our affairs have the finest intentions and cultivate them, but I do not know why you let them. But it might be so.
Because every form of life is justified in its existence and can think and act according to its own forms at its own discretion. We must not exert violent influences if this is not vital, so we can only act on the path of instruction and emergency attacks, as determined by the directives.
So I start from the assumption that certain forms of life which are strange to you are trying to wander around from the vastness of the universe on our Earth and in the space of the world, and to influence other forms of life in various forms. On the other hand, I also suspect that one or more groups of descendants of your old race have not yet returned to you, and that they are still living according to the forms of a deity. Since they still have to live according to the old forms, it can practically only be that they influence many life forms, and also the Earth humans according to this, and appear as emissaries of a god.
With your speculations, you are very right, because there are other forms of life in the earthly space than just ours. There are also still some splinter groups of our own former races here, but also on other worlds where they still live according to their old forms. They constantly try to influence the life forms, especially the Earth humans, according to their forms. Already the ancestors had appeared as gods, and they still do. They are anxious not to release the Earth humans in particular from this form and to continue to make them dependent on themselves through stoic references to religious heresies, etc., and to cast them under their spell. For a long time, they have been trying again to break into your world in order to subdue humanity on the Earth.
Contact Report 028.
Even if we ourselves have not yet reached perfection and are forced to make mistakes, we have nevertheless evolved to such an extent that we are superior to the human beings of the Earth in many forms. That is why we only adopt determinations that are anchored and justified in absolute logic. So when we enact determinations, we know very well what we are doing and what purposes they serve. We only enact determinations where they are necessary and should be followed. In all technological stages of development, we are 3,500 years ahead of the Earth human according to earthly time calculation, while the development of consciousness has progressed about 25 million years further, which should be taken into account by all. Therefore, if an Earth human, who is behind us in this period of development, is of the opinion that his or her illogical ignorance exceeds our logical knowledge, then this corresponds to a selfish megalomania, as you like to call it. We too often make unrecognized mistakes. In no way do we try to exercise dictatorial measures or to impose our will or our knowledge on Earth humans. We have only taken on the self-imposed task of transmitting the teaching of the truth and some other things. Whoever wants to accept and acknowledge this teaching can do so according to his or her own decision, and whoever wants to reject it, rejects it.
Contact Report 029.
At the present time, we are the most highly developed life forms that travel this Earth from outside your world and are also stationed here. Although there are other life forms that penetrate your Earth space, fly in, and partly also have their stations here, we correspond to the highest level of evolution of all. The second most developed form of life after us lies little more than 1840 years of total evolution behind us. Of all present extraterrestrial life forms which currently live in the earthly space, we are therefore a little more than 1840 Earth years ahead in the total evolutionary standing. When we therefore communicate explanations and interpretations, then these correspond to the highest level of knowledge and wisdom and the highest known truth, which must not first lead to truth in a confrontation through any explanations and interpretations of much more deeply developed life forms. What we therefore convey to you is the finally known truth, up to and including our spiritual level.
Contact Report 030.
You will also have the opportunity to take a few pictures of star systems and galaxies, etc., and also to see from a distance the original homeland of the human races. Today, it offers a strange picture, whose origin is based on a violent destruction of a very large star. The destruction was triggered a very long time ago by a barbaric and power-hungry Ishwish, which ended in the destruction of himself. According to his senses and predictions, however, the destruction developed exactly in the form of the desired image, which was to serve the life forms of the universe as a memorial to his power. The predicted form was a gigantic image of an eye now looking through the universe as an evil memorial to human insanity and human greed for power, but otherwise millions in the entire universe, but of natural origin. True to its eye-like appearance, the structure has been named Ishwishmata in connection with the producer since its creation. This name means, translated into your language, Eye of God or God's Eye. According to your astronomical data and designations, you will find the Eye of God in the constellation of Lyra, and you name it the Ring Nebula, or M57. Note: additional comments about this are found in Contact Report 05187-95.
Contact Report 031.
The camera is a product of your technology, and it was acquired by one of us.
You surprise me. You must have gone into our villages or cities then.
Is that so strange?
I always see you in your suits, and with these clothes neither you nor any of yours could step into the eyes of the dear Earth humans.
Sure, but we also have clothes of your type. We need these because we move amongst you here and there, naturally shielded from swinging waves, so that we won't be harmed by the swinging waves of the Earth humans. However, we can only do this for a short period each time. We don't have identity papers of your kind because we don't need such things in that form. Should it happen, however, that we get asked for such documents, then we are able to adjust this by influencing thoughts. This adjusting takes place through the power of our thoughts, by which a mock appearance is created for the concerned questioner, and information from actual persons of your world is simulated for him or her. An eventual police officer, etc., would thereby get the impression that he or she had some documents in hand, etc., and that he or she was verifying them.
That is deceit, Simyase.
No, it deals only with the creation of a hallucination, if you want to call it that.
One of the highest mountains, as far as I know, is Chimborazo in Ecuador.
Surely, and by calling it, you have named the highest mountain on Earth. This mountain is indeed surrounded by many myths and legends, and in earlier times has played a very important role in the activities of extraterrestrial intelligences. This he has done, but please don't call him Ptah, dear God, because this always evokes in us painful memories of the very early times of our history. We have indeed maintained the designation of Ishwish, but it has acquired a completely new meaning for us. There certainly are still many subtle differences which can be perceived between ordinary persons and Ishwishes or other advanced life forms, but everything is still fundamentally aligned towards there occurring no more differences in appearance, so that each life form is equal in value to any other.
But now I have a question. Do you speak any other language besides the one we are using now?
Yes, some English and Greek, naturally also Swiss German and some Bawi.
The old Greek form of the language?
No, the new Greek.
That is very good because I have also mastered that language. We will be able to speak in this language then, and I won't need to use my translator device.
Of course you cannot know this. My father doesn't speak a word of German. What he has spoken until now was our own language. But you see the small device on his belt there? That is a language transformer, a language converter or translator, as you would call it. With this language device, we can transform one language into another and make it understandable to both. But we like very much to speak in other languages and gladly bypass these technical means when there is an opportunity.
From somewhere, an android appears, bringing the camera. Very cleverly, it builds it into a frame and adjusts it to fit. Suddenly, the thing speaks to me, and once more I am utterly astounded, though I cannot understand a word. Simyase quickly enlightens me.
It wishes you good luck.
But that cannot be. This thing cannot think and act independently. That would be crazy.
But nevertheless it does. Its whole body is half organic, and its brain biochemical organic. We have completely different characters ourselves. Sure, look, you can see the characters of our alphabet in these letterings here.
Now I have it, Simyase, but I still lack the umlauts, etc. Are there also any such pronunciation keys of this kind?
In our language, these do not exist.
I make the interesting observation that Simya Sei's face is suddenly seized with a slight red, obviously in reaction to the words just spoken. Secretly, I am delighted by this, for now I know for certain that she is influenced by feelings, even though she has always been cleverly able to hide them. Apparently, one only had to touch the right place to make her lose control over her feelings. But now I have one more question about your script. How old is it actually, and where does it come from?
That is very easy to explain, because these characters that we use today are only 11,000 years old. We took them over at that time from our ancestors who lived on the Earth. Our old characters were very complicated, while these now are very simple. It was developed by several of our scientists who were on the Earth at the time, who used constellations as seen from Earth as templates. They connected certain constellations with lines and obtained the characters' shapes as a result. Our script consists of small circles and lines, being that the circles represent stars and the lines just connect them.
That's interesting, and your explanation is enough for me. I am only surprised by the fact that this script is no longer known on Earth.
It has simply fallen into oblivion after it was adopted by your Earth human ancestors and was used during a few centuries, during which, however, it was modified in many ways. Only a few of the Earth human alphabets today have characters which trace back to ours, before they were modified and made unrecognizable.
That's amazing. So the writing was not developed and put into use by the Earth humans themselves?
If you speak of the earthbound forefathers of your human races and not of the sons of heaven, then you are correct. Because the script was first brought to Earth by the sons of heaven, that is, by those who were actually responsible for the original arising of today's Earth humans. And since I am already speaking of this, I want to ask you something before we jump into null time, the timeless, or in the eternity, as you call it, for 7 minutes, which will happen in a few minutes. The perceptions there are completely different from the ones that are normal in material life. For that reason, it is also not possible for us to empfinda and receive your thoughts and feelings, because we are still in the process of consciousness-related and spiritual evolution. Therefore, neither I nor my father, nor any of us, will be able to reproduce for you later your feelings and thoughts so that you may write them down yourself. If nevertheless you wish to do this, there is a technology-based possibility.
Of course I am interested in remembering all my feelings and thoughts. But am I not able to do this myself?
Yes, of course. But you know that your remembering ability is not so highly developed that you can repeat longer memories word for word. That is also not the case with us, which is why we need technical means to reproduce words from symbols and impulses, which then can also be transmitted to you telepathically and which you are able to write down in your own words then, that you form from the impulses and symbols. For this reason, the words that are written are not exactly and literally the ones that were spoken, but they still represent the exact meaning of what was said, which you, according to the impulses and symbols, dress in your own words. The cabins, which you can see there, beside the screens, are equipped with all necessary means to capture empfindungen, feelings, and thoughts. The collected impulses are automatically stored in a special computer and may later be reproduced by it according to convenience. The adjustable and fully adaptable helmet that you see there is fitted with very fine probes and also encompasses a special sensor network in the form of a fine mesh, which intercepts all types of energies and converts them into impulses, which are then forwarded to the computer where they are registered. The captured energy from the thoughts, feeling, Empfindungen, etc. is grounded in very high values and can only be held by this equipment. The energies of Empfindungs, feelings, and thoughts exist in this form of transmission only in the realm of hyperfrequencies. To be able to register your thoughts, feelings, and Empfindungs, it's just necessary that you sit yourself in the chair and lay your head under the helmet cap, which will then adapt itself automatically to it.
Following Simyase's instructions, I promptly sit down in the extremely comfortable chair inside one of the 3 cabins. As soon as I'm seated, a peculiar helmet moves over my head and settles down silently. It is so large that it encompasses my whole head, only leaving my face open, so that I can see out from it and watch everything. But the helmet does not touch my head, rather lying equally close all around and staying about 1.12 centimeters away from my skull, as I can feel when I place a forefinger between the helmet and my head. Man, what are you doing, Asket? You give me a kiss on the cheek. Girl, what's with that? I always thought that this would be a thing that is only done on Earth.
But I see that a change has occurred. I am sorry.
You mean my arm?
Yes, I could have a device made for you, which would completely replace your arm. A semi-organic apparatus. I hadn't really thought I allowed myself to be guided by my compassion alone. Nera, with us both sexes are acknowledged as both equally valuable and entitled. We too are only plain human creatures in which feelings move. For my own interest, I have occupied myself with photography.
Asket, Nera, and Simyase stand together, and I take more photos now. Unlike Simyase, Asket and Nera don't wear spacesuits, but normal clothes, which are actually quite different from those I know of Earth women's clothing. But they all are very well dressed with them.
You let feelings germinate in me thereby, which are not of a joyful nature, and which arouse impulses of a rebuking kind. It should finally be noted that by earthly standards, we are very advanced life forms, and we can no longer move among such low understanding-based levels as the Earth humans find themselves in. This doesn't represent presumption from us, but rather a law of the creation. Like it is with us, it is with all life forms, also the Earth human beings. Besides us, there are still several other extraterrestrial intelligences moving in the terrestrial space, who, however, stand in a much lower stage of evolution than our own, and who are developed ahead of the Earth humans by only a few centuries, and by only around 1243 years of further development at most. These life forms are therefore able to come into contact with the average and somewhat more intelligent Earth humans and to communicate with them, which however happens only very rarely, if ever. Since these intelligences have not yet gone very far ahead of the Earth humanity in terms of development, they very often conduct themselves as rulers and can even let themselves be misled and influenced by the Earth religions, which is why many higher developed life forms in the universe must intervene in a regulatory manner to prevent severe consequences. Because where religions are widespread, always after a very short time, chaos, enslavement, exploitation, and consciousness enslavement rule, whereby all consciousness-based progress comes into question. Some Earth humans have taken possession of parts of contact report transcripts, describing real, much earlier, contacts with such extraterrestrial intelligences and created new, imaginative stories and formed religions and sects from them. Thus they stepped, or would have stepped, into the public and mendaciously claimed, or would have claimed, that they had or would have had contacts with extraterrestrial life forms. Other Earth humans allegedly, or in reality, received various inspiration-type messages from such low levels, That is to say, from meagerly developed in consciousness terrestrial or extraterrestrial humans, adulterated these, or produced them unconsciously, or consciously and untruthfully. This also resulted in malicious fantasies that purely spiritual life forms would have gotten into contact with Earth humans and would still be doing so. But this truly is not so, because purely spiritual forms only establish contact with life forms which are very highly developed in spirit and in consciousness, as only these are able to receive their vibrations and can bring about the necessary understanding. So, if other claims are made by Earth humans, then these do not correspond to the truth, but rather to consciously or unconsciously deceitful fantasies. The fact is that very highly developed life forms, or even pure spirit forms, were since always never able to establish contact with Earth humans, unless they met an extraordinarily high spiritual and consciousness-related state, which led likewise to an extraordinarily high level, as it was the case with several true prophets. In each cosmic age, a world brings forth only very few of such highly developed in spirit and consciousness-based life forms. If the average form is still on a very low level of evolution, as it is the case with the Earth humans. On the other hand, these highly developed life forms of such worlds, the prophets, also appear only at certain times when they are necessary. And on the Earth, this is the first time that such a case has occurred since nearly 2,000 years.
I thought you said that the device for photography was useless. I mean the one from Simya-se. What about the one you want to make in collaboration? Do you think I will be able to take better pictures with it later, and that I won't always conflict with the grid frame?
I think the device will be good. But what do you mean by conflicting with the grid frame?
You know, the Simya-se device is a bit complicated to photograph and a bit small. When I take a photo, I am always bothered by the small grid frame and the screen housing, and I always have that darn thing in the picture. I always have the half-oval shape of the frame appearing in the picture. Nevertheless, but won't you interfere with me again and spoil the pictures, like you did with the group shots?
Surely not, because I allow you to take photographs.
What are these things? What is it about these group shots?
I am not comfortable talking about it.
Have you lost control of yourself and committed an illogical act?
Yes, I am really displeased and embarrassed.
I see. That's why you do not want to talk about it. And I suppose you have also deliberately kept quiet about it.
Sure.
So you have been keeping something from me, Simya-se.
I actually did because I was embarrassed in front of you.
Oh, look at that. So you can do that too? That is good news, because it makes you even more human and lovable in my eyes. But come on now, what cramp did you offer in the group shots?
I really do not want to talk about it.
This is not correct, Simya-se.
I also think so. Look, you really don't have to be ashamed in front of us. Every human being might make mistakes. I am sure it also happens to your High Council. Or are you vain and feel your feminine vanity offended by revealing your cramped secret?
Vanity is really foreign to me. I am simply ashamed.
Please, you do not have to. You really do not, believe me.
You are not going to laugh at me?
My very great word of honor.
Good. I acted completely confused and lost all control over myself. I told you it is incomprehensible to me. I have really lost control of my actions. It is incomprehensible to me and also extremely embarrassing.
Do not get excited about it, girl. You have obviously just lost your head and suddenly started thinking with your feet. That can happen to anyone.
That was really very illogically acted by you. But the reason might be found in the fact that you had to face a completely unusual illogic, which you were not able to cope with. This led to a short circuit, so to speak, in your otherwise logical manner of thinking, which set off a veritable chain reaction of illogical actions, which could only be ended by running through their sequence of actions to the end.
Sure, it must be so, but I do not understand why I could act so irrationally.
That is very simple. A human being who thinks only logically can no longer imagine illogic at all. But if such an illogic approaches him or her, they are no longer able to overcome it with their logic and fall into a confusion. This confusion, however, triggers illogical conclusions that lead to such actions. These in turn have to die down before rational logic is able to break through again.
It was a wonderful pleasure for me to see you again. Farewell.
Asket, what is it with you, girl? You, girl, you are crying. What is it?
She is very sad because you are a very good and dear friend to her.
Recently, it was explained to me that in various governments of our Earth, extraterrestrial intelligences are carrying on their activities, and are even permanently employed there. What is this all about? Can we believe these statements?
You call such things fairy tales.
So this means that there are no star people working in our Earth governments?
That's what it says. If these statements were true, then peace would have come to Earth a long time ago, and earthly humanity would have been taught the truth by the governments. But since we extraterrestrial life forms, according to our directives, have no right to interfere forcibly in earthly affairs, we must confine ourselves to the form of selecting predetermined Earth humans for this purpose, in order to be able to transmit our knowledge through them.
But it is said that these extraterrestrials would secretly and undetected participate in or with government agencies.
This is also not so, which your logic itself can confirm. If it were really so, then within only a few days, no authority, no government, and no military power would hunt down our ships, because we actually have all possibilities to nip such things in the bud. If we were to be active in any governmental bodies, there would be peace on Earth. So all the claims are nothing more than lies, I mean, when such things are claimed by us or by any other extraterrestrials. Such lies are often due to religious machinations of some sectarian elements and of unscrupulous fantasists, liars, swindlers, and frauds. In truth, there are probably also malignant intelligences from outer space that haunt your Earth or stray there, but there are not so many of them that they would be of great significance. Most observations of flying discs with human predations are of terrestrial origin. Earth humans should be aware of this when they encounter any flying discs, whose occupants are well aware of the fact that very many human beings believe these objects to be of extraterrestrial origin. This knowledge is also very often exploited by them by imagining some gullible Earth humans as extraterrestrial intelligences. Aware of their religious power, they also do not shy away from pretending to be angels and God's messengers and appearing as saviors of Earth humans, whereby they then proclaim the deceived gullible to be contactors and assign them mysterious missions which are supposedly for the benefit of Earth humans, but which in reality only serve their own profit and the benefit of their own country's espionage. The most popular places of origin these malevolent deceptive elements and occupants of earthly flying discs name are Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus. But also, the nearest neighboring systems of your solar system have to serve for this, as well as the Pleiades in the coming time, when you will have become world famous through your contacts with us. In the process, my daughter Simya, say, and my person will also be falsely accused of being contact beings with Earth humans who are fraudulent in this respect, as well as alleged Pleiades beings who do not exist. This system is from your homeworld 1.73 billion 1,130,000 light years away, and despite this great distance, the cause of the destruction is to be found on Earth. The inhabitants of the Nisar system, the Nessaraner, were a technically and consciously very highly developed people, and they formed a uniform race of humanoid form. For a period of 17,000 years, they lived in complete peace with each other and with the races of the other systems known to them in their galaxy. Their evolution in consciousness and technology was very high, but unfortunately, only in the knowledge of the use of their powers of consciousness. They did not possess a spiritual goal in and of itself, and they also had no knowledge of the creation. All their spiritual knowledge rested solely in the partial recognition and observance of the laws of nature. According to these, they acted correctly, but were unable to attain any spiritual goal. By omitting the most important factor of creation, they remained one-sided and exposed to the danger of being led into confusion by unreal consciousness. This danger was very great, and it grew constantly, because the Nessarines moved very far away from their galaxy in terms of research and came into contact with intelligences which were completely foreign to them and which imparted to them very foreign forms of thought and teachings as well as philosophies. As long as these were still compatible with the laws of nature, everything went well. But then it happened that 3 expedition ships of the Nessarines strayed into the SOL system through a false leap in hyperspace and found human life forms on Earth. That was exactly 1,067 years ago in Earth time, 908 AD, and very similar to Earth humans, they mingled with them and lived together with them for about 50 years, unrecognized and very interested in all earthly things. In particular, their attention fell on the religions dominating the Earth humans. With their highly developed technical possibilities, they collected everything attainable concerning the religions known to them, stored them in their apparatus, and allowed themselves to be very strongly influenced by them. Since their consciousness was only oriented towards natural law, but not also towards the creation, they very quickly found a false sense in the various earthly religions, but they became just as unaware of the false as Earth humans. They now saw another goal and eagerly endeavored to strive towards it. The religious influence thus gained by the Earth humans appeared to them to be of unusually great significance and importance. So they set out to find their home galaxy again, which they actually succeeded in doing after 4 long years of wandering about, to the chagrin of their whole and truly great home system and its inhabitants. The religions learned on Earth were spread and taught on all inhabited worlds, while a small armada of great spacers was sent to Earth to collect further data of the religions prevailing there. During 5 years, research was carried out in secret on Earth, and everything to do with the religions was registered. Then the expedition returned to the home galaxy. Once there, the expedition members discovered that various changes had taken place in the meantime. Houses of worship had been built on all worlds, and the human beings had become discontented. Despite these findings, the new data was evaluated and disseminated, and within another 50 years, the entire great system was under the influence of various earthly religions. Human beings could no longer understand each other, and anyone of a different faith was accused of unreal teachings. Soon these insults led to evil accusations, to quarrels, and then to hatred. Families among themselves divided into different religious groups and beliefs, and then soon the first blood flowed. The family members began to fight and kill each other, and soon it was family against family. This spread to housing estates and whole residential areas, and suddenly it was everyone against everyone. What you call a civil war ensued after another 7 years. The high councils were completely powerless against this, because organizations such as the military, which could have brought order, were unknown in the whole Nisar system. In sudden realization of the madness of the religions brought in from Earth, the rulers banned them. But it was already too late. The civil wars had already escalated into world wars, and soon the first worlds were destroyed. After another 3 years, a vicious system-wide war of annihilation was underway, with the centers, the suns, being destroyed. Collapsing in on themselves, they tore into all the planetary systems with irresistible gavolt. A gigantic mass arose, which took over everything that still existed. Eventually, the planets and stars were pulled into a whole heap and joined the huge mass. This is how the enormous structure you see there came into being. A destroyed solar and planetary system of enormous proportions, caused by religious madness, brought in as a deadly form from Earth. Here we are again much further away from Earth than before. The distance to your home system is now 1,160 million light-years. This is the galaxy ASAP, and over there you see the world DSOM. It is a world inhabited by human forms, according to your time and values, living approximately in the Middle Ages. They live in larger villages similar to those you have in the Oriental world. A second race from this world doesn't live in permanent houses. It is nomadic and builds huts out of plants and bushes.
Sim-Ya-Se is busy with various of her apparatuses and also speaks into a device in a melodic language that is incomprehensible and completely foreign to me. Aha, but what language were you speaking earlier? I have never heard anything like that before, and it is absolutely alien to me.
It is a sign language that can be spoken.
I don't understand that. But a sign language can only be drawn or painted or written by certain movements and so on.
That is not so, because sign languages can actually also be spoken. To explain this to you in more detail would take a lot of time.
Besides, I am not tired, hungry, or thirsty. So what is really being tinkered with?
Sim-Ya-Se did give you some of our fruits and also some vegetables to eat.
Of course, but that was a long time ago.
The vegetables and fruits of this kind are very nutritious and thirst-quenching compared to your produce. They can satisfy your hunger and thirst for up to 90 hours.
I accept this explanation, and it also seems to me to be as you say. But something is still wrong. Why am I not tired?
This is also very easy to explain. You breathe the same air here in the Raumer as we do. But this corresponds to the conditions on our home world and is much healthier and more invigorating than on Earth. The oxygen content is several values higher than on Earth, and there are also some differences in the composition of the other elements. But everything is as breathable for you as it is for ourselves. The different composition of our air, however, guarantees us a longer wakefulness and a much shorter need for sleep than is the case on Earth. That is the reason why you are not tired. You are taking your fun a bit far, my child.
Aha, so Sim-Ya-Se is just teasing me?
I was just teasing you a little bit.
Do you mean loosely along the lines of love likes to tease?
If you think of it in terms of friendship, then yes.
I am interested to know if there are worlds and life forms in the universe that are roughly equivalent to earthly norms.
Parallels can be found everywhere. For example, there are also worlds that are very similar to Earth, and on which there are also human life forms with almost the same development as Earth humans. One such world is found in the galaxy Eratom, in the system NEB, and the world is called Cartag. Cartag is 8,008,000,000 light-years from Earth, and the human beings living on this world are at war with each other. Their time is the time of nuclear use, and they are currently waging nuclear war.
And this is not being prevented by you?
It is not in our concerns to interfere there because the system is under the control of a highly evolved life form that is trying to prevent disaster there. The Carthagian life forms, however, are at an important turning point in their evolution and at the end of their nuclear age. They are still destroying each other with nuclear bombs, but this will not last much longer. Foresight says that in less than 10 days their war will be over and they will join the decrees of the controlling intelligences.
So they are a little more evolved than Earth humans?
That is so. They take the final steps to pass through the barrier of unreason. Interventions may only be made when discernible catastrophes of galactic or intergalactic magnitude loom. What you see there is now Carthag. Now go with Simya Se. She will show you the world up close.
On Carthag with Simyase. I thought you told me that the inhabitants of this world here were somewhat more advanced than Earth humans. I don't see any planes or anything. If they are throwing nukes at each other, they must have some, right?
You are wrong. Their flying apparatuses do not meet the standards of terrestrial aircraft because they are already beamship-like. They also do not drop their death projectiles from their flying apparatus, but shoot them up into space with rockets and then steer them back down towards the enemy. The rockets are similar to those used on Earth to shoot up satellites. Only their technology and propulsion forces are fundamentally different from those on the Earth. But now, see the city ahead and look here on the screen. We want to take you to the galaxy Beberus, to the world Niebuhr in the system Crass.
Where is that and what's interesting there?
It is 9,280 million light-years from Earth. This galaxy was in very early times a favorite destination of many races who became proficient in space travel. There are many planets there, which you on Earth call primordial worlds, and which are inhabited by many animal forms. Often these animals are very gigantic and of unusually large growth. They exceed all normal standards of like animals on other primordial worlds in the universe. And this very fact attracted very many space races to these worlds. Even today, this is so.
Do human beings also live there?
Sure, but they are not life forms brought forth by these worlds. On primordial worlds, there are no human life forms yet, because these usually only come into being at much later times. We are not aware of any primeval world that is inhabited by dinosaurs and human life forms at the same time.
I didn't know that. But as you say, human beings still live there on Niebuhr. Is this an exception to the rule?
No, because those life forms were transplanted there. The human beings on Niebuhr no longer correspond to the actual evolved life forms of this species, for they are feral and degenerate. In the course of several millennia, they have evolved into wild beings, as was also once the case on Earth. On the world Niebuhr. The reason is that two different human races from two different galaxies had established research bases on the planet and lived there during many years and explored this world. As on Earth, they built pyramids and were thus protected by solid walls from the hostile and rampant environment. However, due to a cosmic catastrophe, one day the homeworld of one race was destroyed, and so the human beings living on Niebuhr could not go back. The homeworld of the second race fell to an unknown deadly epidemic, and all life forms were destroyed by it. So the human beings of the second race stationed on Niebuhr also found no way back and decided to stay on the planet. In the tropical humid climate, all their technological devices were slowly destroyed and rotted away over time. The human beings had to watch this decay bitterly and could only hope that another space race would soon appear and save them. But this was not so, and it was not until nearly 3,000 years later highly developed life forms appeared again on Niebuhr. During this long wait, the space travelers stationed there died. Their descendants, however, slowly became savage and primitive, and slowly adapted consciously and physically to the savage and barbaric world. They reverted to savage primitive humans, whose descendants still live on Niebuhr today.
But then how is it with you and other highly evolved life forms in the universe? Do you or others also bring euthanasia into use?
Certainly, it is applied everywhere, and in those cases where there is no possibility of any change for the better. But these possibilities are much greater in relation to the earthly ones.
Are you saying that you can cure irreparability?
In certain cases, yes.
Have you worked out these possibilities of a cure yourselves?
Only partially, because as is usual in the universe, we have received help in this regard from higher evolved life forms.
I was talking to Simya Se earlier regarding help, etc., between different life forms in the universe. Can you tell me more about that? Specifically, I would be interested in the cooperation between different life forms for once.
Are you thinking of cultural cooperation between the different life forms?
Yes, but also in every other relationship. And what about cooperation between the life forms of this universe and other universes?
Our worlds are not divided into different states as on Earth. Each world has a unified people and a unified world government, as you call it in earthly terms. On every world, the government acts as a force of order and execution, and these are all subject to the High Council in voluntary form. This High Council forms the actual leadership of all our worlds, that is, the central government, so to speak. This, however, is not located on our home world, but on a very special planet. This is the central star of government for our races. The High Council that lives on this planet is made up of semi-spiritual, semi-material life forms. So these are human life forms of quite enormous knowledge and wisdom, who are in the stage of transition to the first pure spirit form, the level of Arahat Athersata. This means that they have already progressed so far in their evolution that they have got rid of the pure material body and are already half spiritual and therefore also only half material. They are also the only life forms that can still be called half human and are able to make contact with the first high pure spirit forms, which is absolutely impossible for pure material life forms. Not even we ourselves are able to make contact with these or even higher pure spirit forms, consequently this can be done even less by Earth humans. So also our High Council had to contact the Arahat Athersata plane at our request in order to initiate its transmissions to you. Hence you see that an Earth human being can never communicate with high spirit forms in a purely spiritual or consciousness sense, let alone that an Earth human being could communicate with them or even with high spirit planes. As an example of this, take your own person and ourselves. You, as we are very high in spiritual values, above the values of all Earth humans. But also we are not able to connect or communicate with Arahat Athersata's level. Through the mediations of the High Council, we, like I, are able to receive the transmissions from these high planes, but that is all we can do. Like you, we are also not yet able to ask any questions or give any answers to these high planes. And just like you, we are also a receiving system without any transmission capability. The swinging waves of the spiritual planes are simply far too high for us to be able to generate them within ourselves. This is really only reserved for life forms that already exist in semi-spiritual form themselves. Our peoples, then, are all subject to the central government formed by the semi-material, semi-spiritual High Council. The planetary governments, then, are only executive organs of the High Council's order. The form of government of the High Council rests in the creational and natural laws and recommendations, and is therefore not a form of government known to you. Purely creative and natural laws are applied to all events and all order, according to which every single life form is also consciously directed. Thus, every single decision of the High Council is ordered in accordance with the thought form of each individual life form. This, however, implies that each individual life form has approximately the same state of evolution in spiritual and consciousness terms, although minor deviations cannot be excluded. Our teachers of spiritual evolution, however, strive with all the means at their disposal for the constant development of the consciousness and spirit of each individual life form, whereby all our peoples live in approximately equal swinging waves. So much for our own peoples. Throughout the universe, space travel is practiced by innumerable different life forms, by humanoid but not always very humane races. On the whole, however, the like or like-minded always come together and enter into alliances with each other. The values of these alliances are geared to mutual help in every respect, so also to the relations of all things evolutionary. This is a wonderful cooperation in all aspects of life, which even reaches into other universes, such as the Dal universe, in which you have now also been. All alliances, whether universal, interuniversal, galactic, or intergalactic, are oriented towards peace, towards progress in all material aspects of life, and towards evolution of the spirit. In all this, however, struggle is not excluded, for battle-seeking or inhumane life forms appear again and again, and according to their forms, exercise violence. These must, of course, be countered. This leads now and then to fighting and to the destruction of life forms and materials, etc. As alliances exist between different life forms, therefore law and order services are established to monitor the entire inhabited space. These services of order are carried out with great spacers such as mine. These are actually great spacer stations, which are equipped with all conceivable technological possibilities, in order to drive away possibly appearing enemies or, if necessary, to destroy all their material so that they are bound to their planets. With these great spacers, a service of order is thus maintained which extends over many systems of galaxies. Fundamentally, all highly evolved life forms are concerned to devote themselves in a peaceful frame of mind only to the spiritual evolution and to the advancement of the technology, of the consciousness and of the knowledge, etc. But since this universe, like many other universes, is animated by very many kinds of life forms, it cannot fail that struggle is also a part of life. But wherever it is possible, no life-killing eliminations of life forms, and also no eliminations of materials, etc., take place, for every life form requires its evolution, and fundamentally this always proceeds in the same manner in its very many stages. As low as Earth humans and many other life forms in the innumerable universes are today in their spiritual development, etc., so low were our very early ancestors, from whom Earth humans are actually also descended. Apart from us, there are various other life forms of extraterrestrial origin that make contact with Earth humans now and then, and thus only extremely rarely and often only in an emergency. In earlier times, this happened much more often, which also had its reasons. This was due to the fact that in earlier times, by which I mean several millennia, very many Earth humans still knew of the existence of the celestial suns. They were in regular contact with them and also traded with them. However, Through the intervention of various malevolent elements, both terrestrial and extraterrestrial, these contacts slackened, and gradually the knowledge of the existence of extraterrestrial intelligences was lost. Secretly, however, malignant intelligences of masses addicted to world domination created their station on Earth and on a neighboring planet and upgraded the cultic religions. This was all done in secret and with the use of many evil means. Apart from these machinations, however, there existed undertakings of other and not evil intelligences, which endeavored to bring about the real evolution of Earth humans, because these were, after all, descended from them. But since they could not officially appear because of the constant danger from the malignant life forms, they had to do so secretly. Besides, after so many millennia, Earth humans could not be expected to suddenly appear officially again with beam ships and spaceships, for the knowledge of them had been lost to them. A sudden open reappearance would have caused worldwide panic. Then the SOL system moved into the age of Pisces, and this offered all interested extraterrestrials a new opportunity to intervene in earthly events without the human beings being able to notice it. The cultic religions built up by the malignant intelligences offered the best conditions for this. Since it was no longer possible to approach Earth humans with logic and truth, the most subtle truths were smuggled into cultic religious stories and spread all over the Earth. This offered the possibility of paving the way for the truth and spreading it via cultic religion. Even before the age of Pisces, therefore, prophets were also chosen to work in this sense and to do justice to the creational truth. Then at the beginning of the Piscean age, the prophet Emmanuel was chosen, who then spread the teaching truthfully and unwritten in understandable words of the time. Later, however, it was again maliciously falsified, as had been the teaching of the prophets of old. With Emmanuel's work, however, a time had finally come again when extraterrestrial intelligences could once more increasingly make contact with Earth humans. However, the inveterate cultic religions chose the beam ships and spaceships as celestial vehicles for religious purposes, so that once again there was nothing left but to let the truth seep through very slowly through the religions. Thus, extraterrestrials practically aided and abetted the malignant earthly cult religions in order to be able to serve the truth, for they had no other possibility. Earth humans had already reached the point where, if extraterrestrials had officially appeared, they would have engaged in acts of war against them, but this had to be avoided at all costs. There would have been the possibility of influencing consciousness, but as you know, this is forbidden by important directives because no life form may be illogically interfered with by force if it concerns any matters of development. So these factors meant that landings with beam ships and spaceships could only be carried out secretly. But contacts with Earth humans had to remain just as secret. Then came the first labor pains of the Aquarian age, and suddenly Earth humans began to listen within. But he or she also began to think and to investigate, and suddenly he or she realized that logic was to be found only in truth. He or she realized that in seeing and hearing there was a lot of deception and only rarely the truth. Thus, in a very short time, he or she developed their faculties of reasoning and searched inquiringly for logic and truth through conscious learning and thought work. This, however, is a marked characteristic of the Aquarian age, and to this characteristic, all wisdom-knowing intelligences adhere. And this, among other things, is also one of the main reasons why extraterrestrial life forms only reveal themselves to certain individual Earth humans, upon whom they impose certain tasks which they can carry out according to their knowledge and their concepts, if at all. Until now, these tasks had to be woven into religious phrases in order to make them accessible to Earth humans. But now these times are over and the truth must be spread as the truth really is. If, however, Earth humans again bring contact reports of alleged extraterrestrials in religious form, then they are guilty of lying, and they lead back to their own delusions and unreal machinations, as well as to the world dominion-addicted, malignant intelligences, or to earthly religious machinations and delusions in this respect of some misguided Earth humans. 85. The present time of the Aquarian era demands the thinking of the human beings of Earth and the evolution of consciousness and spirit. These factors, however, cannot be attained by seeing and hearing with the physical organs concerned, but only by reason and understanding. Therefore, if we were to make an official appearance with our beam ships and spaceships, the effect of thinking and researching would be annihilated, for a life form, such as the Earth human in his or her present stage of evolution, still thinks and researches in spite of everything in the form that everything is real to him or her, that he or she can see with their eyes and hear with their ears, or that they can touch. We do not claim to know everything or even to be omniscient, but we are accurately oriented about all those matters that are connected with Earth, its life forms and extraterrestrial intelligences. Our technology is the highest and most advanced of all life forms that visit the Earth. This technology is therefore also what guarantees us the best possible control, so that nothing can actually escape us that is connected with Earth humans and extraterrestrial intelligences, at least in those earthly areas that we are currently monitoring. If, therefore, I explained to you that only 3 life forms of terrestrial origin have been flown out into space by beam ships in this century, this corresponds to absolute reality, for it is precisely for such occurrences that the best precautions have been taken on all sides in order to be able to control them with the utmost precision. It is therefore absolutely impossible that an Earth life form, an Earth human being, should be allowed to experience a flight into space through us without our being oriented about it. And when I speak of us, I am thinking not only of our own race, but of all extraterrestrial life forms that move in earthly space. They are indeed different, and some of them even have a quite low level of development. Admittedly, we are not in direct contact with all of them, because certain factors do not allow us to do so. But we have contact with several of them and partly work together. However, they are mostly all known to us, but so are their technical and consciousness-based possibilities. This allows us to include them with extreme precision in our controls so that with absolute certainty nothing of their doing can escape us. We are always precisely oriented about every undertaking, and it is impossible that our devices and apparatus would not register something. Of course, from time to time, there are strangers with whom we do not come into contact and whose origin we also cannot clarify. However, these are rare cases. In addition to these evil life forms, there are also extraterrestrials who abduct Earth humans from time to time, which Sim Ya-Se has also told you about. However, these cases are relatively so rare that they are hardly worth mentioning, although the abductees usually never return to the Earth. But here again there are exceptions that are extremely rare and hardly worth mentioning. Most of the time, the abductors are time and space aberrations who only arrive to the Earth through their ignorance, through technical damage, or through irrationality. On the other hand, however, there are also some inhumane races to whom Earth, when they discover it, means a welcome expedition planet where they rob life forms of various kinds, but this is just as rare that it should not really be mentioned. Our weapons are in any case always intended only for defense but never for attack. Neither we nor any other life form in this or any other universe can afford to have no or unsuitable weapons. Every single life form race in the universe has weapons of all kinds, just as you do on Earth. Even outside Earth, there is not only peace, for the most diverse and innumerable worlds in the universe are inhabited by the most varied life forms of humanoid and sometimes non-humanoid form. Many of them have not yet entered the state of equilibrium and use their weapons to attack other life forms. However, these cannot and must not simply allow themselves to be exterminated and slaughtered, but must fight back. This is a law of the creation which is extremely recognizable in the laws of nature. If the Earth human being observes the events of nature with just a little interest, he or she will recognize that the first instinct inherent in every individual life form is the instinct of self-preservation, just as it is determined by the laws of nature.
But now I am interested in how far away from the Earth or the Sol system the closest inhabited system is located. And do those worlds' inhabitants also know our Earth?
The next inhabited system is located about 5 light-years away from the Earth, but in a different space-time structure. Different worlds over there are inhabited by human life forms who barely differ from you. Regarding their development, they are several years ahead of the humans of the Earth, in consciousness-based as well as technological terms. The difference between the humans of the Earth and those life forms, which is, however, just one of several over there, amounts to 217 years. They are already capable of space flights in primitive form and also visit Earth quite often. Because their cosmic flight capabilities, however, are still very limited, they depend on assistance stations. Midway between their world and the Earth, they have thus established such a space station, which you can see over there far out in space. They need this station, as they are not yet able to catapult their spaceships across large distances. Also, their spaceflight is still associated with great physical pains. That's why they send themselves to sleep with narcotics during longer travels through space. Besides other races from those worlds, this race comes to Earth very often through an old dimension gate. That's because their home world, which is no bigger than the Earth, is with a very high number of humans suffering from overpopulation and needing enormous quantities of food. Thus, the humans from planet Asket come very often to the Earth to collect plants, vegetables, fruits, and cereals, etc., in order to feed their 23,000 million population with it. However, they collect relatively little usable food, as they know that your world also suffers from a strong overpopulation and has a lack of usable food. So they usually content themselves with taking fruit, grain, vegetables, and plant seedlings and seeds along with them for cultivating them on Asket and letting them flourish. Actual ready-for-use food they collect on other worlds, which they visit often or even regularly. In and of itself, these life forms are of a quite peaceful nature because they have had to endure and suffer a lot during the last centuries. Today they live under a dictatorship, as you would call it, by which they are doing pretty well. Their big problem is nevertheless the tremendous overpopulation, which they can only solve by making uninhabited worlds their own, that they can afterwards populate. Their gyroscopic technology is, however, not yet allowing this, so some time will pass before them being able to emigrate their masses of folk.
That is already a lot. But are other life forms from that system also coming to the Earth? And why are they not helping this overpopulated race?
The others also come from time to time through the old dimensions gate to the Earth, but this happens actually rather rarely. The reason for them not helping the overpopulated race is that this life form has not yet progressed far enough in its development in order to provide them with bigger technological and other assistance and opportunities. These humans are also still too addicted to the material and worldly for granting them greater power.
How do you see your appearance on Earth? When will you officially land and show yourselves to the human beings?
From our side, this is not planned for a long time, but also not from many others. On the contrary, it will be the case that almost all extraterrestrials will withdraw from your planet again when certain circumstances arise. This will be when a race as yet unknown to you sets out from space to visit Earth. Our probability calculations have shown that this will have to happen well after the turn of the millennium, unless aberrant factors arise between now and then, thereby calling this foreseen enterprise into question. However, if these negative factors do not occur, Earth humans will have their first official encounter with life forms of other worlds at this coming time after the millennium change. The appearance of these space travelers is not yet certain, however, for there are still many factors that must first come to pass on the Earth. Misled by the unreasonableness of Earth humans and by the lies of alleged contactees, these alien life forms will first spread great terror on Earth. But there will be no danger from these human life forms, for they will be peaceful and harmless, and they will teach Earth humans peace. Their culture and their spiritual and consciousness-based level will be very superior to the Earth humans, and so they will also not simply land unexpectedly on Earth. First, they will announce their coming through open contacts and prepare the Earth humans for it, before they really appear and land with one of their strange ships, which will be occupied by 8 to 12 life forms. The time to come will show whether all can be thus fulfilled, if Earth humans and their doings necessarily change for the better by then, otherwise all will fail or be postponed to a later time.
That is very interesting, but where will they end up, if at all?
It will not indeed be America with certainty, but it is possible.
Always this America, why only?
It is because the best technological conditions of communication to space are offered there. The population of this country, in connection with the awareness about extraterrestrial life forms, etc., and about their existence, is also the most prepared by the film industry to be able to survive an official appearance without too much panic, even if the coming of the extraterrestrials is usually portrayed extremely negatively and often creates fear and terror.
That is plausible. But surely there are other possibilities besides America, right?
I am sure there are, but I am just explaining what our probability calculations have shown so far.
That will be very good when this official landing finally happens.
It will even be of revolutionary importance if this landing can really be carried out, but this is really only dependent on the negative factors which may come into play under certain circumstances, which unfortunately is still to be expected so far. So, however, it is not yet certain whether the events will take place in this manner, because I do not take this information from a view of the future, but from our vague calculations of probability.
So it's still open then?
That is indeed so, yes, because everything is still extremely uncertain.
But can you explain to me where these life forms come from?
I am not authorized to give information about that in an official form. It is in connection with the Earth human development, when the mentioned life forms land on Earth. It must therefore be clear to rational Earth humans that we only serve the truth and do not indulge in lies.
Contact Report 033.
The events in Bermuda and the Bermuda Triangle are traced back to completely natural things. For about 2 decades, these events, which so far remain inexplicable for the terrestrial human beings, were additionally exploited in other forms by certain religiously dependent and unclearly working groups of ufologists who attributed the events to extraterrestrials. For them, these events were a found meal to feed credulous individuals with untrue and dishonest statements by inventing fantastically dark, satanic extraterrestrial powers, which are supposed to be responsible for the events in the Bermuda Triangle. What could be more obvious in terms of religion than this measure? Because, like the unreal religions themselves, ufology had to have the form of a Satan in order to keep its believers in check. Since ufology was built on a religious basis and only functions in this form, it inevitably had to create two powers in this respect, namely good and bad, black and white, divine and satanic. The events in the Bermuda Triangle thus correspond to a purely speculative form if they are associated with extraterrestrial intelligences.
Contact Report 034.
We must never violate the personal sphere of a life form and thereby act against its own will.
Well, Simya say, then I would like to raise some other problems in this context. Do you know anyone by the name of Seth? Whether it is a man or a woman, I unfortunately do not know.
A very strange name, but no, it is unknown to me. Why do you ask?
That is just as strange, Simya say, as the thing with Gloria Lee. The same person claims in the same letter to Mr. Jacob that he was connected to an alien life form about 10 years ago. Whether this was in purely telepathic form or in material form, I unfortunately do not know. Anyway, this person, if his or her statements are correct, must have experienced certain things via this life form, which obviously refer to us. At least Mr. Jacob said so, because in the letter there is talk of you and of me, so to speak, and that in 1975 I should appear here in Switzerland as a contact person. So this is what he was told about by this extraterrestrial life form about 10 years ago. What do you say to this now?
He is a man at the age of 41 with the name Alois Rickenbach. I told you that we must not disclose the secret of the personality of a life form unless they wish to disclose the secret themselves. It is now 14 years since this man, who wrote the letter to Mr. Jacob, was connected in a primary telepathic and personal manner with a life form called SF. It was a life form from Alpha Centauri, who at that time expeditioned the Earth for 11 months. In this context, Seth and the man met unexpectedly and made friends, as you call it. In the course of the 11 months, Seth enlightened the man about different things and facts, and also explained to him the coming of you and me, because Seth was well informed about this time viewing. But we do not know each other and have never seen or spoken to one another. Seth also learned many things through the man and came to the conviction that the Earth humans had to be told various facts. Thus he instructed the man to make known certain facts concerning extraterrestrial life, etc., to his fellow humans. And since Seth knew many events of the future, he also knew about your and my existence and explained it to him with the wish to spread this knowledge. But the man was afraid of this step and explained to Seth that he was not up to the task. Disappointed, Seth withdrew and left the Earth again, and so the contact with the man came to an end.
Then you could somehow influence him so that he at least contacts us again.
I am not allowed to do that, because that would mean a forced intervention on his own freedom of decision-making.
Then not. But how is it possible that you were able to find out all these things in such a short time?
This is only possible through our analyzers, which I am not allowed to describe to you officially. Certainly, there exist 2 small stations deep in the sea in the Bermuda Triangle, which are also inhabited for 3 years by extraterrestrial intelligences from our Federation. However, those are actually very distant descendants of the former inhabitants of the continent. But they are of absolutely peaceful nature and do not endanger any earthly life forms. Their spaceflight-capable flying devices are also able to navigate in water and can dive to great depths. That is necessary because their stations are located deep in the sea. Very often they can also be observed in those areas, while they surface from the water and vanish in the atmosphere. However, they have factually nothing to do with the events of the Bermuda Triangle, which is unfortunately claimed regarding them.
Do you have a better memory?
It is probably much superior to yours, but my power in this regard is not unlimited either. For this reason, I am not able to transmit our conversations, etc., from my memory to you, but I am dependent on the apparatuses which make the knowledge word for word recognizable again from my subconsciousness and transmit it to you in thought form. No material form of life has an unlimited power of memory. This is only attained in purely spiritual forms when the spirit can get rid of the material body, no longer needs it, and is closer to the creative being than to life. Ha 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 ha. I find that a funny phrase. Steal God's time.
Then at least you have something to smile about.
But that is really funny. I will learn this phrase, if you will allow me.
After all, it's not my doing, and it's a human common good, so to speak. You are also a human being, and so you also belong to this bunch.
Contact Report 036.
As I have just learned, a misunderstanding has crept in between my daughter and you, which please do not pay any further attention to. This is of no further importance, and it clearly shows you that we are not immune to errors either. We have voluntarily assigned ourselves to this task, to which we are incumbent, here on the earth, endeavoring to transmit very much worth knowing to the earth humans, and also bringing, together with you, a valuable teaching as well as knowledge and wisdom. This, too, is warmth and love, and these correspond to much more than we are actually creationally based obliged to.
Look here, this apparatus, it's an area analyzer. If I turn it on now, like this, what do you see now?
Man, that's Mr. Jacob as he lives and breathes.
Sure, you can see he's very busy. But now, look here on this scale. Here the thought-swinging waves are recorded.
This is a real wire mess.
But from which we can recognize all values. Look, this figure here, for example, springs from Mr. Jacob's subconscious. If I enlarge it now, so what do you see now?
Girls, these are real pictures.
Sure, and what do you see on it?
Yes, that is a day. How can I know I am going crazy? How do I know this is a day? Man, girl, this is the next Wednesday, and this is a time. If I decipher it correctly, then the time to be seen is Wednesday, the 22nd of October, 1975, exactly 11:03 hours. Is that right?
Sure, what next?
Hans Jakob reaches for the phone and sets a number. Man, he's on the phone with me. He wants to come to me around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. However, this time varies somewhat.
You decipher and recognize the facts very accurately because exactly your findings are transmitted by the analyzer. Mr. Jacob does not yet know anything about these coming events, for he has not yet become aware of them. But his subconscious already knows what is to come and is now working in this direction. And as you can see, we are able to record these facts through our analyzers and read them. That's the way we oversee and monitor, and so get very accurate data about all the things that matter to us. In the same way, I have also learned that our statements regarding your influence on certain events in your own group are questioned. So I did not look to the future, but only used our analyzers for these things and monitored the subconscious of different persons in your group.
Fantastic. With these things here, nothing is hidden from you at all.
That would actually be the case if we use them without interruption. But since this is not the case, and we still have a lot to learn, we use these devices only for overseeing and monitoring purposes. Everything else that is necessary is worked out in the normal way that is also given to you, namely in the way of the thought work that corresponds to the normal course of evolution. But since this way requires that mistakes are made in order to gain knowledge, we are also subject to wrong decisions, wrong actions and misjudgments and mistakes, etc., just like the terrestrial human being.
That makes sense to me. But may I see something else on the analyzer because...
Sure. You can simply hold your hand on this surface here, then this globe will rotate here until it reaches the desired place, until it is recorded under this needle here. If you then put your hand on this plate here, you can call up any desired life form on this map enlargement according to your thoughts, which are transmitted through this receiver here into the apparatus. So you know exactly where this life form is at the moment. If you then touch this button here, then the life form you want appears in this screen, and next to it the analyses that you now know and are even able to decipher. Maybe sometimes I let myself be guided suddenly by my feelings in certain things. That must be the case, because I have made various factors of your own, Billy's myself. But somehow I feel quite comfortable with it. And now I know that emotions don't always have to be switched off and are very valuable for certain decisions. Perhaps my people have put too much emphasis on controlling their emotions and thereby expropriated themselves of something.
Contact Report 037.
For quite some time so far unknown to us, intelligences have been visiting the Earth. It was not until 1961 that we became aware of them, when they seized 2 Earth humans for study purposes, brought them into their spaceship, and subjected them to a physical-chemical analysis. Note, see Betty and Barney Hill. This is not just one method, but a variety of them, by which mixtures of substances can be separated at will quantitatively and qualitatively, whereafter the chemical compounds can be determined quantitatively and qualitatively in their structure and composition according to their characteristics. Very refined and ingenious methods, combined with an equally ingenious technology, allow these analyses to also be carried out with living life forms, without them being harmed in any manner. To our knowledge, this is still unknown on the Earth, but widely used and widespread among certain space-traveling races. However, they use this method only in connection with telenautics, that is hypnosis, whereby the test or examination objects have no conscious recognition of such tests or examinations. That means that they lack all memory for this time period, by which I refer to the time of the examination or test. The recollection is only establishing itself deep in the subconscious, which is why it can also only be released from there. That, however, is not feasible through the consciousness, but only through a strong hypnotic counterblock, which we call a refractive block. Our examinations in the year 1961 revealed that there was nothing to fear from these space-traveling intelligences. They are humanoid in form, and in fact only did research. Their forms are absolutely human, though their body dimensions are somewhat different from ours. Their size varies between 126 and 163 centimeter. They originate from the planetary star system Zeta Reticuli, as I already explained to you. Their spacecrafts are similar to our beam ships and are extremely well equipped and very suitable for space travel. The atmosphere of their home world is very similar to the earthly atmosphere, so that they can breathe it without great difficulties. However, they are provided with close-fitting filter suits, which offer them protection in a number of respects. To the human beings of Earth, I would say that they are similar to the suits given to the fantasy figures Batman and Superman in the comics, except that in this case the face and the whole head are completely wrapped in the suit, whereby the area around the eyes is secured by viewing and protective glasses built into and integrated into the suit. No doubt you are familiar with the fantasy films of French production about a criminal named Fantomas. If you look at this fantasy figure and replace its eye area with dark protective lenses, you have a pretty good representation of the Zeta Reticuli intelligences in their suits.
Yes, I know that figure from television, but how do you have cognizance of it?
Occasionally, I have fun watching such programs, which after all you broadcast through your television equipment. They are peaceful humanoids. Of course, they differ from us only in their anatomy as well as in their size and skin color.
With which life forms do you have contact?
With forms from your time level, thus from your present-day dimension, because these life forms are not yet capable of the change of dimensions in the manner we are.
Contact Report 038.
Indeed, we also are often subject to mistakes.
A real vision describes a certain form of a guided vision. It is a form of vision that is dominated by many intelligences, including the Giza intelligences. By these arbitrarily provocable and steerable visions, different extraterrestrials, and also we, influence life forms in order to obtain certain impressions for them in this way, which are instructive to them and which they are to make accessible by spreading also to others, in order to also purposefully affect the surroundings. These steerable visions are so massively realistic that the influenced life form becomes convinced that it has experienced the vision as reality. That's exactly why we call it real vision, because it seems so real. Every experience experienced through this real vision lasts as long as it would take in reality. Such real visions do not only last seconds or minutes, but they last as long, in time, as the real experiences would take.
That's fantastic. This means that a human being can have an experience that is in reality, not an experience at all, but arises only from a fictitious vision, but that he or she is not able to distinguish this vision from reality, and thus regards the illusory experience as the truth of an experience.
Certainly, that's the exact description.
But now you said that these real visions last exactly as long as the real experience takes in time. So a lot of time could flow by and many hours could pass?
Sure, even days, weeks, or months.
Contact Report 039.
You Earth humans still have certain characteristics that are no longer peculiar to our race.
What characteristics do you mean with that?
You call it sense of adventure. Sorry, I needlessly excited myself. I felt as though you had not considered the facts regarding the speed. I will probably never understand your kind, but you Earth humans are all a bit strange in this manner.
You mean because of the sense of adventure and such?
Sure, it is something completely foreign to me. Maybe I do actually let myself be guided too much by reason in certain things, without considering, at the same time, the intellectual concerns in a proper measure. It may well be because of our high level of development that we have a different nature in such concerns. With certainty, our somewhat finer dimension also exerts a certain influence on it. Sometime I will have to talk with my people about it, because I think that a different forming in these things would be of use for us.
I know from Asket and you that 91% of the extraterrestrials visiting the Earth are purely human-like, human life forms, albeit with some deviations from our appearance. Through Asket, I have also seen various such intelligences outside of and far away from the Earth, such that were rather gigantic in stature and reached more than 4.5 meters, while the smallest dwarfs and short ones were 40 centimeters tall. But they were all really recognizable human forms. Some looked like yetis, others like cyclopes, miniature Goliaths, etc. Two forms, which I have also never seen on the Earth, were completely different, however. Both were more animal-like than human-like. These were, thus, two forms that belong to the remaining 9% and are, nevertheless, non-human-like human beings. Well, then I have another question. Can you tell me how many extraterrestrials of a good form had contact with Earth humans since ages ago?
Very many extraterrestrial intelligences came to the Earth from the entire expanse of the Milky Way for thousands of years. For several centuries, however, there have only been very few, and only a few of these tried to pursue communications with the Earth humans or even come into closer contact with these. Mainly, the only ones who did so were those who were interested in showing new and better or simply future ways to the human beings of Earth. On the whole, these intelligences were very distant descendants of your indirect ancestors, and only in very rare cases were these different forms of life, but they were still, to a large degree, of a human-like human form. I can say the exact answer to your question, but with the fact that of all the extraterrestrial visitors to the Earth, only 0.57% of those entered into contact with Earth humans. Excluded from these are those who traveled from afar, from the depths of the universe, who became resident on the Earth in ages past and who entered into the earthly history of humankind. Mount Shasta is an old volcanic mountain with a partially still unexplored area in America, or more precisely, in Northern California. The mountain is very rocky and extremely difficult to climb. In the interior of the mountain itself is a small city, which is inhabited by descendants of extraterrestrials, and which, here and there, also receives a visit from their space brothers from outer space. It is a very majestic race, peaceful and good, but which anxiously strives not to be discovered by Earth humans. The entrance to their very deeply underground city is well camouflaged under the eastern mountain peak, and it is impossible for Earth humans to find it. But if Earth humans are ever found in their proximity, then they are made imperceptibly unable to move or distracted by the beam weapons that most of the city dwellers carry on themselves for security reasons. Their golden spaceships of a spherical form, for they master spaceflight, can sometimes be seen when they do not protect these from view. Human beings of this race are very well proportioned in their appearance. Their hair is mostly natural blonde, long and curly, which is very fit for their graceful, Hyperborean nature. Sometimes, despite their shyness of Earth humans, they go into their villages to conduct unrecognized bartering with them, after which they depart and flee in a great hurry, however, if Earth humans come too close to them. But Mount Shasta is not the only place where this race lives, for already at very early times, they divided themselves into 3 smaller peoples, with the other 2 living unrecognized and deep underground on the Aleutian Islands and in Alaska. The whole population amounts to just about 700 human beings.
That is fantastically interesting, and now, a few things dawn on me. But you have just said something about their appearance, from which I could infer that with this race living underground, it concerns very distant descendants of the real Hyperboreans.
You infer correctly.
Man, that is incredible. Then these would, indeed, be the descendants or distant descendants of those who, 180,000 or 190,000 years ago, carried out the actual decolonization in the form that can be regarded, then, as the early history of the current human race, at least for the white race. Among them, then, must have also been the Ishwish who gave Enoch great wisdom. Methuselah went to this one in a later incarnation of Enoch, and Noah was later commissioned by this one's guardian angels to build that ark with which he actually landed then on Ararat.
In that dimension, the world is already suspended in the distant future, but the inhabitants on the earth of that time very rarely penetrate from that.
The world there, note, one of 3 worlds existing in a dimension which was previously accessible through a naturally occurring dimension gate, which no longer exists, in the Bermuda Triangle, is about 870 years ahead of your time. Thus, the human beings are also accordingly developed in their technology and have their own beam ships, with which they arrive at your Earth every now and then. The Earth human is a descendant of a human form from the depths of the universe that is very highly developed in every manner. Accordingly, he or she is also highly developed in his or her proportional form. In this connection, he or she is on an equal footing with our own race, which is already approximately 30 million years further developed. It is strange, but I feel aching emotions in me for you, Billy.
It is very painful to me.
I am very sorry I was wrong with my comments.
I am very sorry.
My own comments were very inconsiderate. You make me seriously agitated.
Soon, we glide out of the airlock into free space and rush on to the moon of the third world, where the human beings of the future have already built their stations and live there.
The human beings of this dimension and time have, indeed, become much more peaceful than those on your world in your time, but they are still barbaric and quite aggressive, so they would force us to land, which would be very unpleasant for us.
Beam ships? Girl, then these elves already master space travel.
Sure, they also have about 500 years more development behind themselves than the Earth humans of your time, which I already said.
There is now the possibility that, on occasion, I will have to walk on the Earth protected by a vibration device.
Contact Report 040.
You were very sad, and inside you cried bitter tears. It makes me feel pain inside. I could not find peace, and I tried. I feel embedded in what you call happiness. I feel great joy in me.
Contact Report 041.
The first question concerns your offspring. How do you do that if you want offspring? Wait a minute. Simya, say, you have to bear in mind that human beings are very misguided about these things. This is especially due to sectarians who work especially on UFOs, and stamp the extraterrestrials as sent by God and angels, thereby glorifying them. In their boundless fantasy, they then ascribe to them a spiritual almost perfection or total perfection, through which they are to bypass the normal path of procreation and procreate the offspring in a spiritual way. This idiocy rests on the one hand in the religious assertion that Emmanuel was conceived in a spiritual way by the dear God. On the other hand, it rests in the fact that the normal and natural act of procreation is an unclean and even animal concern, for which the explanation is again to be found in the assertion of the spiritual procreation of Emmanuel.
We procreate our descendants in the same natural way as is that of terrestrial humans and all other material forms of life in all universes. Man and woman, male and female, mate to commit a sexual intercourse. This form of procreation is a completely natural process in all material universes, which is also normally carried out everywhere in this manner. A man sleeps with a woman, mates with her, and fertilizes her, so a procreation takes place. In a normal form, this is done by bringing the bodies together, which means that man and woman snuggle up to each other, unite in love, and the man inserts his procreative organ into the woman's entrance opening, which takes in the semen that begets, is fertilized, and thereby develops new life. Any other natural form of procreation does not exist, apart from exceptions where, in certain circumstances, a different, unnatural form of procreation takes place, but this is a very rare occurrence. This also applies to artificial insemination, which is usually only used in extreme cases to preserve the species. On the whole, however, the procreation of the offspring is oriented towards the normal sexual intercourse, for only this form corresponds to naturalness and the creational laws and recommendations.
But then how can a woman have offspring if her spouse is not fertile?
Our people and also many other races in the universe have two possibilities in such cases. The first possibility is to fertilize the man concerned. But this possibility also exists with a woman. However, where a man cannot be made fertile, there is the possibility of mating with another fertile man.
Does that mean that the woman then sleeps with another man? That would give us Earthlings a big stink, because here somewhat different views prevail. What kind of man is that? And what about dear jealousy and adultery? Don't the husbands and wives go crazy?
You think correctly. The woman will be mated to by a strange man. But he himself must be attached to a woman that is married, as it is called with you. This is a law of order. According to the laws of order, this form of mating does not constitute adultery because it is an act in the sense of creation. Jealousy cannot therefore already appear because these people are aware of the laws of creation and therefore also obey them. It is also important that all partners reach a decision on such a mating in complete and mutual agreement.
I find that a quite ingenious solution. But can any man be consulted for such an act of procreation?
No, it is not like that. The man to be chosen for this act must have already conceived the limit of his own offspring. Furthermore, his overall evolution has to correspond to a certain high level.
This means, therefore, that not everyone should simply be responsible for this task. Many men would want such a job with us, because sexual satisfaction and degeneration is unfortunately still very important for us.
I am aware of that. With our race, and also with many others, however, these forms of thinking have long been forgotten. Today, this is a very honorable and good task.
Which probably offers very pleasant aspects, if I imagine it like that.
Sure, that is also actually the case.
Sure, because you just told me that you find sexual activity pleasant. Are you ashamed of that?
The only reason I did not want to talk about it was because I did not think it was important. I am not ashamed to talk about it.
But this is important for earthworms, because many believe that extraterrestrials are different in every respect. So it would be good if you would report a bit.
If that is so good, these factors are probably described in brief outlines because they are the same for all human life forms bound to a body. When man and woman sleep together, their thoughts move in quite imaginative paths, which trigger emotions in various forms, whereby physical and mental stimulus zones are set in motion and fill the body as well as the thoughts and feelings with pleasure. These stimuli are very pleasant to call and fulfill the life form with all sorts of desires and disinhibitions, which every life form needs, and thus loosens up in its outermost form. This is the case with any kind of human life form, including ours. It has been a little over 2 centuries since I was married. The marriage with my husband, however, was still childless, because we only wanted to have offspring when he would have returned from a multi-year expedition to a newly discovered galaxy. So he went on an expedition with 7 crew members and 2 small ships. Only one, however, returned after 11 years. But the ship with my husband suffered inexplicable damage and fell into a sun. So I lost my husband, to whom I had only been married for 7 years. On the other hand, it is the case with us that a man or woman is still considered single, as you say, when the spouse leaves life and no offspring has yet been conceived.
I would be very interested in how a birth is actually going on with you.
After conception, the woman carries the child, which has only just to develop, for 9 months in her body. Then the birth takes place in the same manner as this is also known to the Earth humans.
This means that there are no differences in this case. The women have pain and contractions during childbirth, etc., like us.
Sure, there is no difference, at least if you ignore the fact that Earth humans often contain their pain at birth because they are already very effeminate.
Then the women will let the pain of childbirth endure all over them?
Of course, this is the natural birth, which also influences the mother giving birth and the offspring and accordingly influences the manner of thinking in a positive and progressive wise.
Does that mean a woman should give birth without painkillers?
Sure, because only this form is natural and brings great benefits for mother and child.
I get it. There are consciousness-based and physical benefits anyway, if I understand correctly. How many years have you matured physically and consciously?
If you think of the fertility, then the answer is 12 years. Because with this age, every human form is capable of producing offspring. Up to the age of 70, however, marital abstinence is usually practiced in order to make very strong efforts in intellectual and consciousness-based, as well as in activity and training-based matters, in order to be able to educate oneself. This is also the minimum age, usually, that marriage is considered. The pure body maturity is completed at 18-12 years. Consciousness-based maturity is also attained at 18 years of age, while the period of education-based activities, etc., is completed at around 70 years of age, which does not mean, however, that learning and evolution are stopped as a result. It is not the case with us, as it is unfortunately the case on the Earth, that a person rarely acquires further knowledge after his or her regular schooling time. Because with us, the further training in material and consciousness-based form continues during the entire further lifespan.
Well, how is love now with you? I mean, especially between man and woman.
But a true love between man and woman is a very special creation energy sensation through which man and woman come together. In contrast to the mostly only emotional love, as it still prevails among terrestrial humans, our love is of a fine spiritual-based nature and very pure, profound, and therefore lifelong lasting. But between man and woman, and in general between the human beings of our race, there is always only open and honest, fine spiritual-based love, which is only restricted in a controlling manner in certain cases when the situation requires it.
I see, that is very clear. So you are really highly developed human beings and not robots. And also in regard to true love, you are ahead of humankind on the Earth by enormous developmental periods. But how do you educate your children?
This is the task of the parents. On the other hand, however, there is control by the High Council, according to whose rules training and order, etc., also find their correctness through the creation energy teaching. In this form, marriages are also entered into, which is why we do not know divorces, as is unfortunately so often the case with you on the Earth.
Do you not have marital quarrels then? I mean, disputes and disagreements?
Do you think of us as super life forms?
Certainly not. I ask only because this would be interesting for the earthworms of my level, and also otherwise to know.
When two life forms live together in an alliance, differences of opinion inevitably arise. However, these do not have to usarten into quarrels, as is so often the case with the Earth human beings. So, without exception, there are also differences of opinion in our marriages. And it would be very abnormal if it were not so. Also with us, like everywhere else, all life forms are varied in their evolution, so never two exactly alike poles are found together. If it were different, it would mean a flattening and abolition of evolution. Thus, two differently directed poles must always come together if evolution is to come about. This means, however, that these two different poles constantly rub against each other so that two different opinions collide, and therefore differences of opinion must arise for the purpose of evolution. This is an irrevocable law of the evolution, to which we and all other life forms in all universes are assigned.
You also know everything.
Remember, I am still learning. I am having fun with you.
Contact Report 042.
I was very worried about you, and therefore still call you at this hour. It was very hard for me to wait until you had finished your work.
What happens to you with the deceased, that is to say with the lifeless bodies? Do you somehow shrink them into coffins and transport them to the next sun? Or do you bury them as you would us, because they are simply buried 1 meter 80 deep into the earth, in cemeteries? Or do you somehow cremate them? Or do you just totally eliminate them?
Earth burial is just as familiar and customary to us as it is on the Earth. For this purpose, we have special storage facilities away from the inhabited areas. From ancient times, we have also maintained cremation for very, very rare cases, however, when such a cremation is desired. Apart from burial in the ground, however, the total elimination of the dead bodies is not usual. Burials are nevertheless things of individual requests, so one or the other form of burial can be used.
But what is it like now? Should one rather let oneself be roasted or better prefer the earth burial or maybe even a total elimination?
But to your question, it has to be said that the burial of the deceased is the natural form because it has been like this since the beginning. But everything speaks against a total elimination, etc., because the loss of certain fluidal powers which will persist for some time in the lifeless body, etc., must not be ignored, which of course become volatile through combustion or total elimination.
My next question concerns the transplantation of body parts or organs. We have been transplanting body parts from the dead to living bodies, that is to say to living people, such as hearts, kidneys and eyes, etc., for years. What is your opinion about this? Should one do this or not?
This is the type of development of the still primitive science which, with a few exceptions, always has very little success. For example, our scientists also work with transplantation of eyes and other organs. However, these are then transferred to them from the cultivated, living material of the particular life forms. Therein they have achieved complete successes. However, eyes, limbs, and organs of all kinds are cultivated and transplanted by our scientists because the natural human eye, limbs, and organs, and the whole cell tissue, etc., cannot be replaced by any technology. So body organs as well as limbs are not removed from the living or dead in order to be transferred to the living.
What do you do then when someone needs a new limb or organ?
We have the possibility of a complete regeneration. Where this possibility no longer exists, however, we replace what is necessary with organs grown artificially from the cell tissue of the person concerned, which survive the lifetime of the body with complete certainty. This possibility is also applied to lost limbs, etc.
This means no transplantation in the sense that is now possible on the Earth.
Certainly.
Do you live on your Pleiades also in houses, as we have them?
The question is illogical. Certainly, we also live in houses, only we name these buildings differently. No, we do not live in the same structures, because our construction forms are all round, in flat round form with extensions, such as my jet ship, or they are spherical round. Mass housing opportunities, as you know them, are not given with us, because all the—
By this, I mean apartment blocks and skyscrapers, etc., in which people live as if in herds, like in silos, crammed together quite densely if possible, so that they even step on each other's ears standing up.
No, these forms of housing are not what we have, because all forms of life are entitled to open freedom, which also applies to living in homes. Each family has its own home, which is built communally and needs no compensation, as this is usual with you.
You mean mortgage or rent?
Of course, such things are a thing of the past, because we have had no means of payment for a very long time. Thus, even the communally established homes do not require any remuneration. These homes are, however, not arranged in the same way as yours are, where they are built on top of each other. They are all rather single in a large country square of 100 x 100 meters, formed as a garden or meadow or park, etc., with many flowers, shrubs and trees and many other plants, as well as vegetables, etc. Only the structures of the villages and cities are of a different kind and also built for a larger number of people. In this respect, however, no comparison can be made with the Earth.
Man, oh man, that requires an immense amount of land.
Sure, but with us all inhabited worlds are made arable to the last possibility. Every usable area is cultivated and fertilized. Only areas that could not be cultivated were occupied with larger and several types of buildings at the same time, with buildings that you would call factories, with surveillance systems and beamship ports, etc.
And who works in the factories?
Robots and androids under the leadership and control of a few men and women, but who perform only technical surveillance and control tasks.
What does the rest of Pleiadian humanity do? Are they twiddling their thumbs and lying on their ears?
All have their tasks, on the planet itself as well as on other worlds.
Good. How many people live in such a splendid home, which almost seems like a paradise if I can imagine it so?
There are never more than 5 persons, 2 parents, and a maximum of 3 children, because 3 offspring is the limit, which is why we do not suffer from an overpopulation problem like the Earth humans. No, with us, the Geranisa, mother-in-law, abstains from all interference in the interests of their married children.
But now to something else. Do you also know music, literature, and art, and do you have appropriate schools?
Sure, these things are common to all human life forms in the universe. We also have appropriate schools for these things, but they can only be attended by really talented people who will later work in these things for the benefit of all. The interested parties are judged according to the presence of talent and admitted to the schools, so only real talents are admitted. There are therefore no such things as are customary on Earth, namely that performers appear in public who make ear-hurting sounds.
How does your music sound, and what kind of instruments do you have?
I cannot describe the music to you because it would sound completely strange to you. Likewise, the instruments would be alien to you.
Where do you get the money from when you walk around our Earth shielded from vibrations and buy something somewhere?
For these purposes, we look on Earth for precious metals and gemstones with our search devices, which we mine in very small quantities with our devices and sell to buyers, who compensate us with earthly money as an exchange value, which we then exchange into the required currencies as required.
Contact Report 043.
Sit down here now, I want you to. So, now hold your head against this. Yes, that is right. Now close your eyes for a moment. That's it. That was good. How do you feel?
You're driving me crazy. What are you doing? This weird swarm of mayflies has disappeared from my skull, as well as the stupid poking and hammering. I feel much better. What did you do?
The explanations would go too far. In short, I just improved your strength a little.
Aha, some kind of power boost.
Sure, I have infused you with a very tiny unit of primal cosmic energy.
Aha, I understand that, although this process is a mystery to me.
You shouldn't bother about that, because the process is purely technical, combined with biophysical forms.
Contact Report 044.
It is warmer and more comfortable in here. Outside is so very cold.
Aha, another quality I do not know about you yet. So far, I always thought that only I would freeze here.
All life forms suffer from too much cold, when this is not exactly a life-necessary moment for them.
Is your mother actually still alive?
But of course, she lives together with Father in his spaceship. My mother is indeed a very wonderful woman.
Contact Report 045.
Can you get me? Is this money enough here?
That is D-Mark. Where did you get these organized again? That should do it.
Quetzal gave me these bills.
Oh, so he is the money collector.
Sure, he is in charge of these matters. Ore mining or other mineral mining on a planet or on a star is only carried out by us in an extreme emergency, because this process is tantamount to the destruction of the star or the planet.
Contact Report 049.
For my part, I will bring a healing device and let both your ribs heal.
Mr. Bertschinger and Mr. Schutzbach are waiting for me at the pistol range.
Sure, but I will influence them and tell them that you were brought home by me.
How are you going to do that?
I am talking about clues to them.